Harem comedies are the anime genre for those of us who can never get enough. Whether you're craving a nice spicy bowl of ecchi or a comfy cup of moe, you can count on harem anime to deliver, and deliver far more than any one man besides our Lord and Savior Rentaro could ever fully appreciate. And yet, we trash connoisseurs always want more. Which is why I tasked the Chez Garbage chefs with concocting the nearly bottomless bucket of harem slop that you're about to pour down your gullet, selected from across 4 years of hottest trash menus. Of course, a lot of the segues we built into those original omakase menus won't work quite as well in this new context, but that's just the price you pay for getting this many waifus in one place. And the hottest trash playlist is right there on Mother's Basement if you want to see these roasts as they were originally intended. But without further ado, this video is brought to you by Girls Frontline 2 Exilium, a gorgeous 3D strategy RPG in which you'll build your own battle harem of gorgeous tactical dolls and lead them into battle against a sinister conspiracy threatening a ruined world. In Girls Frontline 2, you'll exploit terrain and the innate traits of your units and their weapons to gain the upper hand in intense tactical turn-based battles, then head back to base for some cozy downtime, posing and dressing up your favorite dolls. The latest patch, Aphelion Part 2, introduces Mekti, a new elite support doll to add to your squad, with increased drop rates for her and Diane in the targeted procurement banner. Her elite weapon, the Daydream Assault Rifle, is also available until April 30th, as is Sharkry's new swimsuit idol outfit with a nice limited time discount to boot. And they're doing a limited time rerun of Diane's Narcissus skin, all as part of the limited time Aphelion event, which includes a brand new storyline with a big twist and 4 alternate gameplay modes: Boundary Push, Pathforger, Assault Simulation, and Frontline Survivors Season 2. Complete the new modes and missions to earn generous rewards, including resources and banner pulls, and earn 10 more targeted banner pulls just by logging in every day. Plus, you can get even more rewards by redeeming the codes All Fool Day, I Am Perfect, and 404 Return before they expire. Click my link in the doobly-doo or scan this QR code to download GF2 Exilium today, and go follow the game's social pages for the latest updates. While we're on the subject of abject madness, I'd like to take a second to tell you about Osamake, the rom-com where the childhood friend absolutely will not lose. An anime which, as you might guess from the title, attempts to be a sly satirical subversion of harem and rom-com genre tropes, but instead succeeds at being a rather intense work of psychological horror. It's a Silent Hill sort of situation that places you in a familiar setting, surrounded by seemingly familiar character archetypes, but everything just feels ever so slightly off. Like something alien and incomprehensible is pantomiming our species' social and mating rituals for its own perverse amusement. Nobody on screen ever behaves like a rational or even irrational human being. Surreal and nonsensical events constantly pass without comment, and I'm pretty sure several of the characters are at least capable of being serial killers, even if they haven't tried it yet. As Osamake begins, we learn that Sueharu Maru has already turned down his childhood friend Kuroha Shida's confession because he's crushing on their classmate Shirokusa Kachi. She is a teen writing prodigy and published author whose debut work shook Maru to his very core and instantly made him fall for her. Well, that and her innate great value Mai Sakurajima charms. Unfortunately, just as Maru's planning his confession, he learns that Shirokusa's already gotten herself a boyfriend, a popular teen actor, no less. In response, Kuroha offers to help him get revenge on Shirokusa for the crime of not taking the feelings a classmate she'd barely spoken to never told her about into account before deciding to date someone else. That's some incel shooter logic right there. Lucky for this video's monetization prospects, their method of revenge isn't nearly that severe. Instead, Kuroha just pretends to be Maru's girlfriend in order to make Shirokusa jealous, which is obviously just an excuse on her and the anime's part to shake her stuff in his and our face as frequently as possible. possible. But funny enough, it does actually work to help him get closer to I can't believe it's not Bunny Girl Senpai. And that's when shit really hits the fan. You see, while Maru didn't know this, and thus his desire for revenge is still totally deranged, he and Shirokusa aren't just high school acquaintances. She's actually the secret second childhood friend he forgot about from back when he was a child actor. His virtuoso performances in dramas and her daddy's pharmaceutical commercials so inspired her as a young, shy tomboy to come out of her shell that she begged her daddy to pull strings and let her meet him. They made a lot of promises to each other at the time about him acting in something she'd write one day, but then he quit acting forever with no explanation. And so she vowed revenge on him. But not just petty pretend to make out with your neighbor revenge. She went full Count of Monte Cristo. Everything about Shirokusa, her personality, her looks, her style, the novel she wrote, was meticulously researched and precision calculated to make Maru specifically fall in love with her. All so that she could then break his heart by getting a boyfriend. But in another Shakespeareanly tragic twist, the reason he stopped acting that she never knew despite all that research until he told her, prompting her to confess all this, is that acting killed Maru's mother. She was filming a car accident scene one day, and I'll let you guess what happened from there. What? The car hit her? No, don't be fucking stupid. I told you acting killed her, not an automobile. It missed as intended. She was a perfect actress who always hit her mark. It's just that she hit this particular mark so hard, acted so good, that when she pretended to die, she died for real. Now, I know what you're thinking. Jeff, this is a comedy. It says so in the title. Obviously, that's an absurd scenario that we're supposed to laugh at. And yes, that may very well be true of the original light novels. But if it is, nobody told the anime crew. They play this plot beat 100% straight as a life-altering tragedy that everyone cries about a whole lot while sad music is playing in the background. And maybe playing it straight is supposed to be the joke, but then the show really muddies that interpretation by also having actual identifiable jokes, or at least hornily vague gestures toward the concept of a joke. It's also not the only time the show seems to be completely unaware of how blisteringly stupid its story really is. Like, take a look at this YouTube video of the main character dancing up on a stage. The entire plot of the second act requires us to believe and accept that this performance single-handedly catapulted Maru back into the public eye in an unambiguously good way that instantly opened opportunities for him to jump back into acting and make millions of dollars before he even graduates. Yes, this dance, the one you're looking at right now. Viral sensation. Everyone loves it. Give that man a commercial. By the way, that video was taken during the first arc's climax at the school's annual Confession Festival, an event where students get up on stage in front of everyone in order to ask their crushes out with a microphone. We are meant to believe, as a prerequisite for understanding this plot, that not only do kids participate in this carnival of public humiliation willingly, but that the parents and teachers help organize it. I'm telling you, that is at least as incongruous as Silent Hill's Kindergarten Cop High School. Osamake is what happens when a writer possesses intimate understanding of romance as a genre, but only distant theoretical familiarity with romance as a concept and lived human experience. Also humans as a concept. With that said, at least the Mad Lib's unpredictability of it all and the Herculean efforts the all-star cast of voice actors take to sell it make for an entertaining watch. I'm giving this one 3 blazing back alley dumpsters full of discarded love letters and some thick black hefty bags whose lumpy, unidentified contents are starting to smell suspiciously like cooked pork. There is another isekai that made this list, and I'm kinda disappointed to say that, cause for a couple episodes, Seirei Gensoki's Spirit Chronicles seemed like it might actually be good. The first episode did make me unintentionally burst out laughing when the reincarnated hero's question of "where am I" was met with swelling dramatic music, followed by an even more dramatic zoom out to the exact city that you'd expect to be there. And the edgy grimdark twist where the peasant boy who saved the princess gets tortured by poor-phobic royal guards was about as predictable as it was hilariously overwrought. But then the story started leaning harder into exploring the dichotomy between Ryo's reincarnated memories and the person he is now. It started expanding on the magic system and the world's politics, even building decently believable relationships between Protag-kun and his peers. Yeah, it still did the thing where the comically evil spoiled rich kids make life hell for the poor kid at the Magic Knight Academy, but they can't really do shit because he's that much better than them. But that did work well enough as an excuse to get him on the road doing an adventure, and for a minute, it seemed like that adventure would get really good. There's even a bit where a beast girl slave who he frees while she's trying to assassinate him is like, "Put my magic collar back on so you can trust me," and his response is just, "No, that's really fucked up. Just throw that thing away, please." Maybe the bar for this genre's too low? Either way, it's not long before Spirit Chronicles dips back down below it. Ryo arrives at a village of beastmen that, after a tiny misunderstanding, more or less immediately decides to worship him as a god. Then there's a time skip, and when we come back, the cool assassin girl has forgotten how to assassin, while he's learned how to fly. You know, like Goku does. Also, he has a harem now. The power fantasy takes the wheel, the plot gets increasingly predictable, and the characters get decreasingly interesting in turn, especially Ryo. I can't say I'm surprised. This is exactly where the first episode made me think it was going, but the brief detour into actually decent fantasy gave me false hope, and I kinda resent it for that. I'm giving it 3 standard steel trash cans full of ReZero fanfics that were on fire until someone splashed some water in there, but not nearly enough to stop it from happening again. If you're looking for something a little or a lot less convoluted, you might find some guilty pleasure in Girlfriend Girlfriend or Kanojo mo Kanojo, which has an unusually straightforward premise for a harem anime. Nayamukai is finally happy now that his childhood friend Saki Saki has finally agreed to be his girlfriend, but things get complicated when their cute classmate, Minase Nagisa, confesses her feelings to him with a Michelin star-worthy bento box, after skipping school for like half a year to prepare for that confession. Sadly, Naoya's just too much of a sincere idiot to reject that kind of heartfelt effort, but luckily, he's also enough of a sincere idiot to just ask them both to move in with him. Saki's initially against the idea, but Minase's simply too adorable for the closeted bi redhead to turn down, and so the harem is established officially halfway through episode 1. While everyone in this love polygon is a certifiable moron, they're also more or less aware of their own stupidity, and thus make an active effort to communicate in order to avoid the comical misunderstandings typical of the genre and that trope. Instead, Girlfriend's comedy is rooted in ridiculous oversharing, and the kind of cringeworthy, over-the-top overtures of affection that you'd expect from a man with a heart big enough for 2, possibly more, girlfriends, like buying Saki $1,000 worth of pulls in her favorite gacha game, which of course results in 0 5 stars. The humor in the early episodes is a bit hit or miss, lacking as they are in real conflict or strong, cynical personalities for the schmaltzy, lovey-dovey leads to play off of. In particular, Naoya's off-the-charts cringe emissions are hard to take without any sort of antidote, but episode 4 fixes that by introducing Hoshizaki Rika, a busty, borderline narcissistic MeTuber who is so deeply offended by the thought that a two-timing loser like him wouldn't also want to date her that she stages a protest campout in the throuple's backyard. Rika hits that Rumiko Takahashi sweet spot between lovably quirky and dangerously unhinged, aka the shampoo zone, injecting some much-needed chaotic horny energy into the show's lawful stupid status quo. Girlfriend isn't a great anime by any metric, but it is a pretty damn funny one, mostly on purpose, and makes for a very comfy sort of guilty pleasure, not unlike Winter's The Hidden Dungeon Only I Can Enter. It is a bit less hilariously shameless, though, earning just 3 steadily blazing oil drums. There is one more, much raunchier harem out this summer that I'm obligated to mention here for the sake of thoroughness, but the mother of the Goddess Dormitory is really just another hentai that snuck its way onto TV somehow, and one where the protagonist happens to be 12. So, I think that's about all I need to say about that forever. It gets 2 big yellow biohazard bins full of an unidentified ooze that will not burn no matter what we try, yet is also constantly emitting smoke. Perhaps it would have fared better, in my estimation, had this winter not blessed us with an infinitely more ridiculous and creatively contrived fantasy harem anime. The Hidden Dungeon Only I Can Enter is an adventure story set in a Dragon Quest-esque world where everyone is born with innate skills. Noir Stardia's skill, Great Sage, allows him to instantly know literally it all by asking questions of an omniscient wizard who lives in his head. Sadly, he's never been able to take full advantage of this because that knowledge comes at a terrible cost. Agonizing, brutal headaches that can only be cured by making out with a hot girl, like his childhood friend, Emma, who is constantly vocally aching for it, but not his sister, Alice, who is constantly vocally aching for it. Smart man. Follows the rules. After a rich bully steals his dream of being a librarian, Noir's only fallback is to become an adventurer. So he uses Great Sage to uncover a hidden dungeon in which he can grind for loot and train against rare monsters, and once he gets there, is led by psychic whispers to a beautiful, buxom, blue-haired woman chained asleep to the walls. Via telepathy, she introduces herself as Olivia Servant, a famous world-class adventurer who was sealed by the chains of death after defeating a demon here 200 years ago. Those chains will kill her if removed, so she decides to make Noir her apprentice while he figures out how to get her out of there and pass her unique skills on to him. One of these skills, Bestow, allows its user to pass skills on to other people. Another, Editor, allows its user to edit the conditions of any other skill. The last one, Get Creative, allows its user to create any skill they can imagine, instantly at the cost of their life force as measured in LP, which is a pretty hefty toll, but there are ways of recovering life points. Noir just has to do things that give him life, like eating a hearty meal, finding gold or treasure to satisfy his earthly desires, or touching some boobies. I don't have to tell you which of those comes up most often. So to recap, this protag-kun has the power to know literally anything and do literally anything, with the drawback that these abilities will hurt or kill him if he's not constantly experiencing ecchi scenes. You may not think that's a drawback, but just imagine asking your adventuring companion to suck on her ear while a monster is trying to eat both of you, and you'll begin to understand what a fearless hero Google Stadia really is. It doesn't take long before girls are fighting over him. As soon as he turns his first quest in and proves his stuff, Adventurers Guild receptionist Lola decides she wants to have a very close working relationship with him, which bugs Emma, but not that much. She's not saying, "Get your hands off my mans," just, "Hey, leave some room for my hands." And that's a good attitude to have because every other woman they meet also wants to jump Noir's bones, which totally makes sense. Sure, he's so dense that he can make out with a girl every single morning before school and still be convinced she only thinks of him as a friend, but, look, he's protag-kun, don't question it. That seems to be the driving logic of this entire show, actually, and it tends to be pretty tongue-in-cheek about it. Noir's Emoto has magic ahoge that automatically detect when a new harem sloot has entered his orbit, for example. And at one point, he picks up a lucky accident skill that dramatically raises his odds of fumbling his way face or hands first into more life points. Then, realizing its immense, terrifying power, he immediately edits it so it won't interrupt any important story scenes or,
ruin a funeral or something. Spoofing harem tropes is nothing new in anime, of course, and none of these jokes are particularly clever. The real comic gold in this dungeon lies in its efforts to set up fan service moments, because despite having built-in excuses like that lucky accident skill and those magic headaches whose only cure is a heaping dose of tongue, the hidden dungeon only I can enter is never content to rest on its laurels or rely on cliches, and it gets real wacky with this stuff. In one scene, a combat instructor rewards Noir for his excellent dodging by sitting on his chest, and then punishes him for complaining about it by sitting on his face. Face sitting, by the way, is also a skill in this world. Lola's rival receptionist, Sarah, is an A-rank face sitter. Gotta watch out for those min-maxers. In another scene, to earn the money and life points they need to cure a death curse that Noir just happened to notice that one of his classmates was under by randomly scanning her, he, Emma, Lola, and an elf priestess named Luna, who, I can't stress this enough, just met them like 2 days ago, take part in a harem dog show run by a very divorced nobleman and his cult of incel shy guys, with the girls performing tricks like warming your master up when he's cold and planting 3 kisses on his lips simultaneously, which seems physically impossible. It's like a D&D Mad Lib filled in by a 12-year-old boy who just found out what sex is last week from an anime and isn't entirely clear on the mechanics yet, but nonetheless thinks the whole thing is pretty nifty. And while this show is substantially hornier in its scripting than even high school DxD, its production values are, on average, so low that it's rarely genuinely sexy, and even when it is, it never aims above a PG rating. So, with a few exceptions, this is the sort of hilariously trashy ecchi that anyone can laugh at without feeling too uncomfortable. Fun for the whole family when they inevitably walk in on you watching it. The series has some fast and loose fun with its fantasy elements as well. Goofy, weird monster designs and silly skill and stat-related jokes abound. Its cast is also generally fun to be around, even if they are a little flat in their characterization. It's not as strong a fantasy comedy as Konosuba, or even Suppose a Kid from the Last Dungeon Boonies moved to a starter town, but it is funny on purpose, and the intentional comedy helps to smooth out the weight between the most outrageous moments of contrived fan service. By the way, don't miss the after-credits scenes in every episode from 3 onward, they're really something. I'm giving the hidden dungeon only I can enter 4 steadily blazing oil drums for its uproarious unintentional comedy and surprisingly cozy overall atmosphere. For the greedy trash connoisseur not quite satisfied with X-Arm, it's definitely the season's next best worst thing. On that note though, if you've been to more than one of these garbage tastings, you'll know that while we try to keep our menu varied and interesting from season to season, we do keep a few reliable favorites on rotation just so that we know everybody will leave happy. There's always going to be at least one harem on here, for instance, and this spring, that harem is a couple of cuckoos. The premise is simple. Nagi Umino, a straight-A student attending the top school in Tokyo despite coming from a poor family, has just found out that he was swapped at birth with another baby. On his way to meet the DNA donors, he bumps into this cute girl who looks like she's about to jump off a bridge, but is actually just faking it for attention on Instagram as a way of getting back at her parents. See, while Nagi is finding himself with his past being suddenly redefined, Erika Amano, a semi-famous influencer from a very rich family, is having her future stolen away from her by way of an arranged marriage, and this is her best idea as to how to lash out about that. But after talking to Nagi, she has a better one. Pretend this guy's her boyfriend so her folks will lay off. He doesn't really have the time for that, but he accidentally harem protagonisted into her boob earlier, and she caught that on camera, so she doesn't give him much of a choice. After some slice-of-lifey shenanigans, they do really hit it off, though, and they find a pic that's good enough to trick her dad into calling off the marriage. Or so they think. Unfortunately for her, that twist you imagined when I described those two scenarios back to back, but then immediately dismissed because that would be way too insane, even for a harem anime, is actually what's happening. Erika is the baby Nagi was swapped with, and both their parents have come to the conclusion that the best way to sort that whole mess out and give everybody the children that they raised and the children they wanted is to marry the both of them, so legally, everyone's parents. This does not sit well with the fiercely independent Erika, of course, who hates having stuff decided for her even though she kinda likes Nagi, and he's great at taking Insta photos. And it doesn't sit well with Nagi either, since the only reason he's a straight-A student in the first place is he's trying to impress Hiro Segawa, the hottest, smartest girl at his school, who we will later learn is also in an arranged marriage. And it really doesn't sit well with his adoring little sister Sachi, whose brain is just starting to connect the dots between some of the trashier romance manga she's enjoyed and the whole we're not actually blood-related thing. So that's already pretty complicated, and it's only made more complicated by the fact that Erika's dad is a stupid rich hotel magnate who can afford to just set aside an entire mansion in the heart of Tokyo for his child and his other estranged child to shack up in. It's an utterly ludicrous concept, even by harem anime standards, but the comedy of errors that ensues from it all is fairly entertaining, I must admit. The characters have really strong personalities that balance against each other well, not just with Nagi. The whole group has chemistry, and you're guaranteed a laugh when they hang out in pretty much any conceivable formation, though the romantic half of the romantic comedy equation is pretty weak. It's nowhere near the same tier of harem comedy as, say, quintessential quintuplets or even nisekoi, but if this particular kind of trash is your kind of trash, or if you like getting into very technical arguments about what does and doesn't count as incest, it's probably worth a watch. I give it 3 dumpsters full of D-grade dating sims and Kentucky law books, lightly smoldering. Now, speaking of isekai, if you're wondering what the Shield hero's been up to since he returned this season, the answer to that is fighting this big turtle. Not preparing to fight it, not traveling to get to the fight, not even struggling in an epic, drawn-out, multi-episode battle to kill the darn thing against all odds. No, they manage that in the first episode of the fight. But then it gets back up. Again. And again. And again. Imagine if the white whale part of ReZero was just the whale with none of the witch cult stuff, or the politics, or the personal growth on Subaru's part, but also its endless 8 from Haruhi. This is like 3 times worse than what you're picturing, and that was before the anime production committee got to it. Apparently, this stretch of the source material is widely considered to be boring for some reason, but it's also too plot essential to skip, and you'd need to change a ton to fix it, so instead, they just sped it up to get back to the parts fans actually want to see as fast as possible. However, in the process, they took something that was once merely tedious and transformed it into a nigh unwatchable jumble of fast-forward info dumps and quarter-assed fight scenes, thus ensuring that a sizable chunk of their casual audience will never get to those parts because the show got bad and they dropped it. And it doesn't help that since Naofumi's name was cleared, the show's basically turned into the riding of the dick hero like every other isekai. There's also a new girl in the squad, because of course there is, it's a new season of an isekai anime. What are they gonna do? Not expand the harem? Rishia is an extremely clumsy and insecure type of moe blob, and she wants Naofumi to teach her how to be strong so she can fight alongside Itsuki, the bow hero, whom she has a crush on. This is, by isekai standards, astoundingly deep, complex, and unconventional character writing. I mean, a girl having an interest in a guy who's not the protagonist? How's the audience supposed to project themselves onto that? Shield Hero cleverly dodges this thorny issue by making Rishia deeply, agonizingly irritating to the point that nobody would want to waifu her, a trait only amplified by the fact that we skipped the non-plot essential training arc that was supposed to make us sympathize with her. Instead, our first real introduction to her is when she and the gang go to the slave trader in order to make her Naofumi's slave. Voluntarily, of course, for the slavery EXP buff. you see, which she needs due to her unusually low growth rate, which is holding back her otherwise once-in-a-thousand generations potential as a martial arts prodigy. Though until that problem is solved, she is able to fight alongside our heroes and harness some of that potential by wearing high-level fursuits that give her lots of stat bonuses. I swear I am not making a word of this up. If the first season of Shield Hero was 3 dumpsters full of flaming Bud Light boxes, then season 2 is all that plus 1 budget fursuit, trash compacted into a small, inert cube of dull gray aluminum and then placed inside an equally dull gray aluminum trash can. Arifureta, if you didn't know, is back this season in full force with slightly upgraded visuals. Now it looks like the contents of your high school DeviantArt folder fighting baddies that fell out of a PS3 game, and very downgraded horny camera work to match, which is both disappointing because the Queen's Blade level shamelessness of the original was incredibly hilarious, but also a relief because it means there's way less my editors will need to cut around to avoid getting this whole video demonetized. Luckily, the story side of the production hasn't lost even an ounce of its shameless wish fulfillment juice. Hajime's got himself a magic submarine with magic torpedoes now, plus these cool crossbit things straight out of Gundam that hang in the air around him, blocking shots and adding extra pew-pews to all the usual blam, blam, ding, 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 kapow, of course, all his waifus are still in tow too, and also, when they finally meet Miu's birth mom, she decides she also wants a piece of the man her daughter is calling Papa. Plus, that one hot teacher's still thinking about their mouth-to-mouth resuscitation session, and the camera's spent an awful lot of time focusing on Sword Girl. Even at 4 members, this harem clearly still has the potential for exponential growth. Also, the in medias res teaser that kicks off the whole season shows Hajime fighting a literal angel, so that's probably going to be pretty fun when it happens. And a lot of the dungeon crawling, monster fighting adventures our heroes have been on so far have already been a lot more fun than they were in Season 1. On the whole, Season 2's action has been considerably more competent than it was before, which more or less offsets the relative lack of hilarious horn-dogging this season. Also, Seaman's back. Everyone loves a hot load of Seaman. Really, there's not much else I can say about Season 2 that wouldn't just be regurgitating my last roast, though. Arifureta Season 2 still earns itself 4 high school dumpsters full of all the notebook doodles that you would totally murder most people if they ever laid eyes on them, on fire, naturally, because you set the fire, but then one of your drawings slipped out into the breeze and your crush picked it up and it was an extra spicy drawing, so now you also are on fire because you set the fire. But this time, the drawing was slightly less spicy than the one from last season, but still spicy enough that you set yourself on fire, though. Now we are no longer speaking of isekai, though to the untrained eye it will be hard to tell. The world's greatest demon king gets reincarnated as a typical nobody is a fantasy anime based on a light novel where that thing in the title happens, except for the last part, because the demon king Varvatos actually gets reincarnated as a super strong, cool, and important guy who all the women are throwing themselves at all the time. And that cool, strong, and important guy's name is Ard Meteor.
What a stupid, phony, made-up name.
The reason that Ard wants to be a typical nobody in the first place is because in his old life as Varvatos, he was way too strong, and obviously nobody wants to be friends with strong people because they're so scary, so he was very lonely. And at first, when he's a kid, he still has trouble making friends because he's so awkward that they run away from him as soon as he opens his mouth, but luckily his parents are friends with this elf Baron guy whose daughter is also really lonely, and she's scared of being friends for reasons unrelated to how strong he is at first, but then he kills some monsters that were gonna kill her, so she becomes his friend, and they're best friends, and they're probably gonna get married one day. And then they go to a magic school together where, on account of that incident and the reputation it gave him for being a super strong and cool and important guy, everyone wants to be his friend now, because obviously you want to be friends with a strong person so they can protect you from scary stuff. And you might think that contradicts the initial premise of the story, but shut up! Anyway, the only two friends who actually matter for plot purposes, and also plot purposes, are Irina, the cute, innocent elf girl who is his childhood friend, and Ginny, a succubus girl with no self-confidence who they save from this rich bully who treats her like property, and then they take her down to a dungeon to teach her speed magic, and after that, she has all the self-confidence, because that's how character arcs work. And she mainly uses that confidence to advocate for Ard getting himself a harem, because she thinks he'd look really good with a bunch of hoes hanging off of him, which Irina is vehemently opposed to, though that mostly seems to be on principle because she clearly wants it, and she clearly would not mind if Ginny watched. But she had better get used to the idea, and fast, because when her other best friend, who she has, even though she's not supposed to have any friends, who is the queen, decides to reward Ard for saving the city from some demons who showed up around the time demons are supposed to show up in this kind of story, the way she decides to reward him is by having his baby, which she announces to her entire court within about 2 minutes of meeting him. But actually, though, Irina doesn't have to worry about her because that's a fake queen, and Irina is actually the secret shadow queen of the country who has to hide her identity because she's a descendant of the evil gods who the Demon King killed to make the world good before he reincarnated. But even though he himself is that Demon King, Ard doesn't stop being her friend when he hears that secret, because why would he? That's stupid. They've been friends for years. Obviously, that trumps some minor backstory detail when you actually know. You know what? This whole anime is stupid. It's just a dumber, hornier, exponentially boringer misfit at Demon King Academy that lacks the gumption to make its overpowered protagonist overpowered enough to loop back to being interesting again. I give it 4 industrial waste skips full of a complete printed list in 8-point font of all the things that would have been a better use of my time lightly smoldering. Those of you who also have an interest in good anime might remember my recent endorsement of My Stepmom's Daughter Is My Ex over on The Ones to Watch, a raunchy rom-com whose title seems to give away the whole plot, but in actuality cleverly conceals a rare attempt to clone Kaguya-sama Love is War. Just instead of the whole whoever falls in love first loses deal, the main characters have to use their mighty minds to trick each other into wanting to bone, even though they're step-siblings now, because going by a very convoluted line of logic that I don't have it in me to explain again, whoever wants that is bad at being a sibling, and thus it makes sense that they should have to be the younger sibling in their new relationship. Imagine having to call your ex-girlfriend One-chan. Wow, it's so much humiliation. I couldn't just, it's so horrible. The stakes in this are super high. So, yeah, it's not exactly the best or even a good premise, really, but Kaguya-sama's story and gag structure haven't been done by any other anime or manga, really. So even a half-baked copy would be novel and worthwhile just for making the attempt, or so I thought. Unfortunately, My Stepmom's Daughter never fully commits to copying Kaguya-sama's laser focus on non-battle battle gags, instead opting to blend Kaguya-inspired character dynamics into a more conventional formulaic rom-com structure, which is probably for the best in a lot of ways, considering that what little genius social strategy the show does manage to show us is of the exact level you'd expect from the kind of manga writer who thinks that public boob smushing is a common teenage female bonding activity, and how the tension of the mental encounters themselves is lost almost completely once you realize that every single one is just heading in whatever direction will make fan service happen fastest, with zero regard for the characters' internal motivations or the fact that they're supposed to be equally proud and intelligent. But even still, I signed up for high stakes, high IQ incest chicken, damn it. Not the same fucking status quo resetting home visit, jealous boys swarm the protag all the time, probably they'll peep in a hot spring at some point crap I've seen in every other rom-com since the dawn of anime. I don't don't care if the two leads are surprisingly cute together a lot of the time, and their petty, abrasive chemistry is still quite fun and unusual, and the exploration of why people break up and get back together is actually kind of legitimately interesting. I can find passable romance like that in plenty of anime, and passable incest-adjacent romance, and passable incest-adjacent romance. But incest chicken? That's new. That's the kind of innovation I come to trashy animation to see, and I just can't help feeling let down to find it so watered down in this mix. Although, the show does have other unique features to recommend it by, features like Akatsuki Minami, the series' cheapo chica stand-in and Yume's best friend, who is not merely random and unpredictable, but genuinely break into the protagonist's house and pretend she lives there insane, and who has convinced herself in the space of like 2 episodes that she needs to marry Mizuto at any costs, not because she even likes him like that, but rather because she's totally in love with Yume and needs to become her little sister. Another interesting feature is Kawanami Kogure, the show's great value Ishigami equivalent, Mizuto's self-declared best friend, and the only guy in school who wants to get close to Mizuto, not for the purposes of fucking his stepsister, but rather so he'll have a chance to watch Mizuto fuck his stepsister and be there to covertly wingman for Mizuto in case it seems like no stepsister fucking is going down anytime soon. An extremely unique and original character who will probably get everything he wants, considering that Yume has already taken to sniffing her stepbro's used boxers in the dead of night. But he might also have to watch Akatsuki getting it on with Mizuto, plus at least one other otaku girl rando from their school, and the Akatsuki thing would especially be tragic for him because she's kind of his nemesis for reasons that haven't been explained, but I'm sure they'll get to it. But it sure does seem like they're laying the groundwork for a harem right now. And why wouldn't they be? It's not like the show's shown any restraint elsewhere. What it has shown, though, is why Kaguya-sama's restraint is so essential to that anime's success. By driving straight toward marketable wish fulfillment and cheap fan service by way of well-trodden plot lines right out of the gate, My Stepmom's Daughter is My Ex ends up undercutting a lot of what makes its own premise unique and interesting. It's still fairly entertaining by virtue of how most of the cast is straight up certifiable, and the premise is, you know, still pretty crazy, even if they do water it down, but it could have been so much more. I give it 3 sizable servings of tofu-based incest chicken substitute, frying atop 3 trash can grills that have had more than a little too much oil splashed on them. Still hot and still trashy, but not quite what I was hoping for. Still, I would take it any day of the week over this next one. Far and away, the largest lump of trash on this season's buffet table is Rent-a-Girlfriend Season 2, which starts off with Kazuya going to see Chizuru act in a stage play, and she totally kills it on stage, but doesn't get the next role that she wanted because of nepotism in the theater business, and then he proudly and romantically declares to her that he'll keep being her good little pay pig indefinitely until she makes it and doesn't need him anymore, because that's what love means to him. And then, I don't know what happens after that, except for the one good arc in the manga, and because I made the healthy choice for myself to stop watching and reading this forever. Look, I've gazed long enough into enough abysses at this point to know what it feels like when they're gazing back into me, and if I want to feel like the future holds no hope and almost every human being around me is terrible and time has no meaning and the only way it's even possible to go from here is down, there's another much better second season airing right now that does all that on purpose for the sake of horror, instead of as a byproduct of its efforts to carve out a cavernous void inside my soul that can then be filled with endless figurines and body pillows. I give Rent-a-Girlfriend Season 2 5 entire dumpsters full of that one page from JoJo where Rohan's all like, I refuse, which might be on fire or might not. I don't know. Do you want me to check?
断る
Do you think I'll be able to find some new stuff to roast in there if I do?
断る
Do you want me to make another video because that last one was so hilarious? Koto fucking waru, motherfuckers. Futukuno Guild at least gives my editors something postable to work with. Marginally, since, you know, them outfits and them camera angles. It's one of them anime where you can tell the clothes are only still on because the audience is into that, but unlike Grill, it at least has a bit of a plot between all the plot about a super OP adventurer guy who wants to quit and enjoy a normal college life. Unfortunately, he's the only one who knows how to work his particular molesty monster slaying beat, so now he's got to babysit a crew of grossly incompetent cute girls as they very slowly learn the ropes. Sometimes by getting tied up with ropes. If you've ever wondered, what if Konosuba, but only darkness, you have a sick, sick mind. And Futukuno Guild is here to answer its every sick desire. But you'll have to find those answers somewhere other than an official streaming platform because, yeah, they learned their lesson after interspecies reviewers. And I learned my lesson about putting buxom dog girls in tight clothes on YouTube after Slave Harem in Another World, so that's all I've got to say about that. And frankly, it's all anyone needs to hear about that before deciding whether or not they want to watch it. Futukuno Guild gets 3 Spirit Halloween dumpsters full of unsold sexy D&D costumes that are just completely soaked in gasoline, plus some of those recalled Paw Patrol fire helmets with their ironically faulty flashlights turned on. Now, if you're in the mood for something a little less intense, but that you'll still feel at least somewhat ashamed of when someone walks in on you watching it, that wholesome fantasy harem I was talking about, Beast Tamer, might just be up your alley. Beast Tamer follows the standard I can't believe it's not isekai template C, wherein the main character is a former member of the stereotypical heroes party who leaves due to a personal difference of some kind and discovers his untapped OP magic potential approximately 5 seconds thereafter. The specific personal reason this time around is that the heroes party is full of jerks who only value combat ability and thus think of our pushover protag Rain as dead weight because all his beast taming powers are good for is doing Disney princess impressions, scouting any area or situation in a matter of minutes, and carrying all their supplies. So when I said they're stupid jerks, I mean they're really stupid jerks. Anyway, in the opening scene, they bully our protagonist about what a useless, underpowered dweeb he is, and kick him out on his ass with only the shirt on his back because the party earned all his equipment. Then, on his way out of the building, some local urchins run up to tell Rain what a swell and nice guy he is, and also how everyone in the community already thinks the heroes are jerks, just in case you were worrying there'd be any narrative tension around what that does to his reputation. And then, on his first ever solo quest, he just happens to run into a magic cat girl, an ultimate species of beast with massive strength and even more massive gazongas, who informs him that he, alone in his class, has the power and potential to tame such legendary creatures, who will then lend their own incredible powers to him in turn, giving him a super buff body and magic and stuff. And, why, yes, they are all hot girls. However, did you know? So, yeah, Rain immediately lands in a new party full of badass beast girl supermodels whose favorite hobby is validating him, and gets better stats than all the bullies at school in his old party, all because he's just the nicestest guy ever, plus secretly super talented and cool. And one day he'll show all the fools by killing them with kindness. Or violence, but only after they inevitably give him no other choice because they're just too stupid and prideful to realize how better than them he is. Yeah, its waifus may not be that naked, but at the end of the day, Beast Tamer is still just as much of a juvenile male power fantasy as any half-baked battle harem you can name. But hey, at least it's a vaguely pro-social power fantasy with pleasant characters and a cozy, low-drama hangout vibe in the same rough ballpark as quintessential quintuplets. One guilty pleasure, hold the guilt. I award Beast Tamer one Build-A-Bear bin full of fire-retardant fluff and kitty cat plushies with a gap the exact size and shape of your body in the fetal position right in the middle of the pile. Love Flops is a harem anime so over the top that a lot of viewers are convinced the protagonist is secretly trapped in some sort of simulation. I mean, how else do you explain him bumping into a girl with toast in her mouth so hard he knocks her panties off, then getting sleep molested and beat up by a sexy stranger on the subway, then having a third, unrelated girl fall on him ass first on the way down the station steps, then stumbling across a bra that was stolen from another girl by a malfunctioning custodial robot that thinks she's trash, and then inadvertently saving a fifth cutie from a stray dog in heat by distracting it with his own enticingly humpable rump, all in the space of one morning commute. Then, of course, all of those girls turn out to be his new classmates, except the train molester. She's his new teacher. And wouldn't you know it, they all hate him on account of the morning's misunderstandings. Until he clears them up with barely any effort, at which point they all start spontaneously confessing to him. Starting with Toast Girl, the only Japanese one, whose heartfelt declaration of love is punctuated by a majestic gust of wind kicking up the cherry blossoms scattered around them, her skirt, and the panties she dropped in that order. So he ends up thinking she's confessing to, something else. And each subsequent attempted confession from the other suitors only further convinces him that they're all crazy. But they'll have plenty of time to leave a better second impression, because it also turns out that all of his colorful, multicultural new classmates are also his new roommates, whom he's now gotta pick one of to marry on the orders of his dad, who is, of course, out of the country on an extended business trip, but that didn't stop him from adding a new wing to the house in the time that the main character was out. Also, one of those cuties, Alia, is actually a petite Russian boy who just looks like a cute girl, on account of dad believing that there's no need for Protag-kun to limit himself based on gender, but then actually, it turns out she's really a girl whose dad wanted a son, so he made her live as a man, but then he died, so she keeps pretending to be a boy, even though she wants to be a girl to, carry on his memory or whatever, up until she gets found out because the absurdly big-nosed Tengu mask that she tied to her crotch slips out from under her hot spring towel. And if you think that's a convoluted jumble of anime tropes, wait till you meet his other suitors, like Amelia, the American weeb waifu, who learned Japanese from pornography and thus only knows all the dirtiest kanji. Or Mangfa-sensei, who's secretly on the run from her former life in a shadowy syndicate of Chinese cyborg assassins. Or Karen-chan, the German supermodel who's secretly... well, it'd be no fun if I spoiled every twist. This is one of those anime comedies that aims to leave you thinking, wow, I can't believe they went there by the end of every episode. And that's not always a good thing. Honestly, could have done without the bit where Protag-kun develops PTSD from being into unconsciousness by a golden retriever, but if you and the crew are in need of some new anime drinking game fodder, it doesn't get much more anime drinking game than this. Love Flops is nothing less than a full-blown 5-alarm dumpster fire. The Eminence in shadow, which is just undeniably excellent on a ton of levels. Strong atmosphere, great action scenes, consistently fun animation. It's a solid production through and through with a ton of obvious talent and passion behind it. But that doesn't change the fact that our main character is surrounded by so many beautiful elf and animal girls in jiggly spandex bodysuits that the only reason I didn't lump this in with the harem anime is because that's literally an army. Or the fact that the story is basically just a vehicle for making all of his wildest middle school dreams and delusions come true. And I don't mean that figuratively. Protag-kun literally threw himself in front of Truck-kun on purpose because he wanted magic powers, which is just the first step toward his ultimate multi-lifelong goal of becoming so insanely OP that not even a nuke can kill him, which he's already accomplished by the time the story proper begins. But that, too, is just another stepping stone toward his ultimate goal of becoming not an anime superhero, but rather the apparent anime background character who's actually the all-powerful leader of a secret society of anime anti-heroes who protect the world from the true threat lurking behind the curtain. A conspiracy that manipulates good and bad guys alike to its own sinister ends. Which doesn't really exist, of course. That would be way too convenient. He's just playing pretend that all the regular bandits he's beaten up in his new world are secretly connected to a plot to resurrect the Demon King with the blood of the hero's descendants or whatever. Or so he thinks. In reality, every last random detail that Sid made up about the Cult of Diablos, including its name, is 100% accurate. They really do control the governments of every major kingdom from the shadows, and his organization, Shadow Garden, really is the last thing standing between them and complete global saturation. The only point he got wrong is that the girls they're kidnapping and experimenting on have demon blood, not hero blood, but that doesn't make them any less effective as an army of sexy magic ninjas once he's recruited them. So all of Sid's chuny delusions have come true, and he's the only one who doesn't know it. What a great comedic premise. But that premise, too, is just a stepping stone toward a series of increasingly insane and unpredictable plot escalations that you need to see to believe. There is nothing I love more than watching a talented team of animators take goofy, self-indulgent concepts like this to their logical extreme, and boy howdy, this anime delivers on that. I give the Eminence in Shadow 3 golden garbage cans full of Haruhi fanfics and bottle rockets, with a flaming truck-kun on a direct collision course. Speaking of spice, it wouldn't be a real barbecue without a harem or two to throw on the grill, and there's another one of those this season that makes Arifureta look downright restrained by comparison. I mean, I assume that's what's happening somewhere under all those black bars. World's End Harem, as the title suggests, is an extremely explicit escapist fantasy for every dude who's ever heard the words, "Not if you were the last man on Earth." Reito Mizuhara is a genius medical student living in a far future world where most diseases have been cured already, except for, inconveniently, the one that he has, cellular sclerosis. Lucky for him, though, cryosleep has also been invented in this future, so he can just take a long nap while he waits for the treatment to be perfected in half a decade or so, which, in current year, honestly sounds like an even more appealing escapist fantasy than the one this is setting up. But anyway, right before his long nap, Reito's childhood friend promises him that she'll wait for him, which sounds nice, but actually puts him in a very awkward position when, right after the nap, he finds out that she's gone completely MIA, and also that the entire male population of Earth, except for 5 dudes with his disease, have all been killed by the mysterious man-killer virus. And it is now his solemn duty to our entire species to bang every woman on the planet, starting with the models and pop stars. He is, of course, horrified by this terrible burden and refuses it immediately. No, seriously, that's what he does. That promise ring is fucking welded to this boy's finger, and he is gonna deliver his virginity to its intended recipient, even if it means reducing the genetic variability of the entire global human population by 20%. You know how frustrating it is when a flaccid Keitaro-type harem protagonist perpetually refuses to do the one thing everyone watching wants to see him do, and also it's literally the key to saving the world somehow? Well, if that's your fetish, then this is the anime for you. I mean that very literally. Reito's ball handler, who also happens to look exactly like his childhood friend but with white eyelashes, makes him a deal that he's got 30 days to find said childhood friend, but she's gonna put a new sloot in his bed every single night to tempt him, just in case he changes his mind, and most of the plot is just that happening over and over. I mean, there's a secret UN sex murder conspiracy thing that's going on behind the scenes, and of course they've also got to figure out what really happened with that virus, but from reading the manga entirely for research purposes, I can tell you that the vast majority of this story's runtime is just porn with extra steps, or I guess it would be one fewer step. I can also tell you that the art in the manga is exponentially better than anything that you will see in this anime, and also that missing no doesn't get in the way of every single thing that you would want to see. Do with that information what you will. I give this anime 3 waste paper baskets full of crumpled tissues that are not on fire, and you know exactly why. Our first anime of the evening may not be an isekai, but if you told me the Cafe Terrace and its goddesses fell out of a time warp, I'd believe it. If you miss the humor and vibes of harems from the mid-2000s, but not their limp-dicked wet blanket protagonists, this one's for you. After inheriting his grandmother's house and the attached beachside cafe, Tokyo U finance douche Hayato Kasukabe is shocked to discover the property comes with 5 nubile young squatters who Granny took in to fill the void after he left. All of whom will do anything, perhaps even that, to stop him from turning the place into a beachside parking lot. But if you've seen even one of these shows before, you won't be shocked, even a little, by the personalities in his harem starter pack. You got the angy but sometimes not one, the dumb sports one, the cute yet crafty one, the cool aloof one who's secretly a softie, and the shy nice one who's secretly a freak. I initially put this one in the bargain bin of the ones to watch because I was thoroughly impressed by the quality of its first episode's plot, and the story of that episode hinted at some decent character writing to match. Unfortunately, that plot degrades somewhat along with the rest of the animation from episode 2 onward, but the character chemistry stays strong, and the overarching story about maintaining a small business and a tight-knit community and carrying on a lost loved one's legacy with a quirky new-found family is interesting and unusually adult for this ostensibly adult-oriented genre. That story still gets interrupted on a regular basis by nonsensical jokes about the girls taking their defining traits to absurd extremes and or flashing protag-kun for no reason in particular. This show ain't out to rock the harem anime boat, but all those girls have hidden depths to them that are revealed in time, and Hayato's actually got a personality and a bit of a backbone, which makes for a refreshing change of pace from your typical Keitaro or Kazuya. Cafe Terrace and its goddesses doesn't quite have the same special spark as Tezuka Productions' last harem thing, Quintessential Quintuplets, but if you're looking for a tasty snack, this show has 5. I give it 2 modest restaurant waste bins full of slightly stale breadsticks and half-eaten cake. The first of your 5 isecourses for this evening, the pottage, attempts to freshen up the otherworldly formula that even trash connoisseurs are growing tired of at this point in a simple yet potentially effective way, by doubling the heck down. Summoned to another world for a second time asks what would happen if a typical Japanese youth who got called to be the savior of a fantastical parallel plane, then sent back home as a reward for his good deeds, got called back again to do it all over, this time in front of all his classmates, with all the OP skills that he had the first time, of course. It's an Isekai New Game Plus, if you will, or Arifureta without any of the setup or interesting personality, if you won't. Now, at first, the answers it finds to that question are fairly entertaining, like when the aloof captain of the Royal Guard assigned to train all the classmates realizes who Protag-kun is and immediately goes full Konosuba darkness horny sub-mode for him, begging him to sit on her. That's pretty fun, as are the bits of him sitting around with his old adventuring party, reminiscing about the good old days and trying to figure out how to bring the good old days back, in moderation. Unfortunately, from episode 2 onward, in which Protag-kun agrees to escort a jeweler's granddaughter to the Demon Queen to return a brooch that he originally gave her as a present, but then she had to get it sent out for repairs, it quickly becomes apparent that catching up with old pals is his primary method of solving all the anime's problems. Which I guess makes sense. I mean, he's
already saved the world and made friends with all the important people, so all he's got to do is call in some favors with everyone who puts respect on his name and flex on the few fools who don't until the day is saved, but that doesn't make it a fun or interesting plot device. The concept of this show certainly has potential, but the execution here is just excruciatingly boring. Isekai again gets one wastebasket full of emails to former co-workers clearing up minor miscommunications that were printed out and framed for some reason. For the Poisson course, we are, of course, serving up the fishiest title of the season, My One-Hit Kill Sister, an anime that gives you everything that name promises and so much more, both in the sense that it is exponentially incestier than you can possibly imagine, starring an older sister down so bad for her little bro that she literally beats herself into a coma just to grope him again after his fateful date with Truck-kun, but also in the sense that it goes way harder than a show with that concept has any right to. As far as jokes go, the one of puny little protag-kun paying OPO Nachon in heavy petting sessions to protect him from big scary monsters becomes routine like halfway through episode 1. The bit where everyone else gives him credit for all the cool stuff she does and all the ladies are constantly gagging for him is even more predictable than that, and adding a second, slightly less OP demonic older sister figure who also wants to jump his bones as her rival doesn't exactly mix things up. But then, anytime you're tempted to roll your eyes at any of that, you risk missing some of spring's most insanely beautiful action sakuga. When OPO Nachon f***s an orc or dragon or slightly less OP demonic surrogate Nachon up, she f***s them up like Goku going to town on a dude who just killed Krillin. And that's just for insulting her beloved little bro. Woe betide any fool who actually lays a hand on him or gets in the way of him laying hands on her. Fans of gorgeously gratuitous cartoon violence will not want to miss this one. Even if the quality of the production and animation in the last couple episodes doesn't quite live up to the first few, the storyboards and general compositions of the action scenes are still phenomenal. I give My One-Hit Kill Sister 3 dumpsters full of flaming piles of money and Alabama marriage licenses. That, regrettably, makes a perfect segue into the Aristocrat's otherworldly adventure, serving gods who go too far. So I'm forced to commit a slight fox pass here by serving the season's cheesiest dish before the sorbet. If your main gripe about a typical isekai is that protag-kun doesn't get his dick ridden nearly enough, metaphorically speaking, then this is the anime for you. If you mean that literally, try Slave Harem. After getting between a convenience store robber's knife and some cute girls, Kazuya Shina finds himself reborn as Kine von Silford, third son of a generic noble family in a generic fantasy world where he enjoys a generic upbringing, learning magic on the down low as he's doted on by his parents and a sister so obsessed with him that she literally has a special obsessed with her brother title on her status screen, until his baptism at age 5, when all 7 of the world's gods give him level 10 blessings. Which is perhaps a little bit OP, considering that most people get 1 or 2 blessings max, and their levels are supposed to cap out at 5. So even when his parents hire both a dollar store Eris Grey Rat and a dollar store Roxy Sylphie hybrid to tutor him in magic and adventuring and stuff, all they can really do is sit on the sidelines talking about how awesome Kind-sama is, while he goes around one-shotting everything from goblins to dragons to Adventurers Guild bullies. And that's just the start. All told, like, half this anime's entire runtime is just people praising Kind for things he did, or maybe if the writers are feeling spicy and want to attempt some comedy, complaining that he did stuff too awesomely, with the occasional break for a cute rich girl to beg him to marry her for being so awesome. The first 2 of those actually happen at the same time, when he saves the 10-year-old third princess and her duke's daughter bestie from a whole mess of orcs, which also results in the king giving him an entire barony and a mansion. And it's a touch uncomfortable watching a child who's mentally at least in his mid-20s hit on and lose sleep over those regal grade schoolers, but the show does eventually balance that out, sorta not at all, with an age gap in the other direction by having the big titty fight slut captain of the guard, who's also a 300-year-old elvish princess, fall in love with him after he whoops her ample butt in a duel. Also, that big titty elf's name is, I shit you not here, Tijuana von Liebert. God, I love it when anime just throws European words in a blender. The wiki tells me there's at least one more fiancé inbound at some point, which would officially put Kine ahead of Ranma on that particular scoreboard, but it also indicates that his sister will eventually fall for a guy who's not him, so that's something. Though, if they cut out all the scenes of people and/or gods sitting around gassing Kine up, I honestly think this anime adaptation could have already caught up to that point in the light novels. Like, in the episode where Kine invents sparkling wine and hamburgers for his mansion warming party, no less than 3 characters have their own separate Shokugeki reaction shots where they just absolutely shit their pants over how delicious both of those things are, which could get pretty messy, but then Kine also invented a magic bidet, which like 5 different people react to in that same episode. The series does have a few interesting ideas amid all the generic fluff that a better writer could have taken in some interesting directions, like how the god of commerce apparently grants divinely enforced patents, but of course it never hops off Kine's dick long enough to explore any of them. I give the Aristocrat's otherworldly adventure 2 dumpsters full of suspiciously stained couch cushions with like 3 factory defect Mushoku Tensei Nendoroids hidden somewhere among them. Okay, but just hypothetically, what if the only 3 ways that you ever want to see a magic guy solve a monster problem is by beating it up because he's the strongest dude ever, fucking it, or all of the above? Has the anime industry just abandoned those of us who only want safe, samey garbage where a Dragon Quest hero type dude saves the world and gets all the bitches? You're joking, right? This is the anime industry we're talking about. Anyway, let me tell you about Classroom for Heroes, the I can't believe it's not isekai equivalent of calling a horror anime old house full of spooky stuff. It's so on the nose that at first I honestly thought this might be trying to like parody the genre. I mean, the tsundere character is only a tsundere because she's literally possessed by a demon. That seems like the punchline to a hilarious joke, but no, what this anime thinks a joke is when a cute girl gets addicted to donuts and then her actress does like an Eric Cartman voice until she figures out how to burn off all the calories by invoking her demonic powers. By the way, that's like the only episode of the show so far that's not just a backstory dump for one of the waifus. Honestly, I'm struggling to think of stuff to say about this one. The best rating I can give it is a waste bin full of plain cracker crumbs. The only thing saving this show from being the most forgettable harem in years is the designs of the background cast, who look right at home in like a medieval version of My Hero Academia or something. Really solid character design. Wish the protagonists were as interesting. On that note though, Liar Rail is a low-grade harem knockoff of the other anime about a weird and cool high-tech school for exceptional kids that's all the rage on TikTok these days, Classroom of the Elite. Boy, that segue sure was tortured. Just as a side note, I am aware that this anime is supposed to be called Liar Liar, but they wrote the title stupid, so I'm gonna pronounce it stupid. Another thing they wrote stupid is the whole ass script for the entire show. So like, there's this elite school island, see, and all the students there are rated from 1 to 7 stars. And if they want to get more stars, they gotta take them from other kids in AR smartphone games. Protag-kun accidentally wins one of those against the school chairman's granddaughter on his very first day while asking her for directions, which means that he could be expelled for embarrassing the institution. But luckily, the star that he won from her just so happens to be a special star that gives you the power to lie about one thing on your transcript, which allows him to pretend to have 7 stars, making him the top class rep and the biggest dick on the whole campus, and also he gets to live in a big mansion with a maid, but if he dies in the game, he'll get expelled for real. So that maid, who's also his classmate, has to help him cheat by hacking into the games with the help from the head of R&D for like a major corporation who for some reason is just 100% invested in this kid's bullshit. Which sounds like it could maybe be the setup for some fun Machiavellian anime strategery, but the thing about those games is they all have totally made up rules that the players can change at any time based on other totally made up rules. So as far as our ability to understand any of that strategery goes, they may as well be hacking into the Calvin Ball database. Anyway, that's the liar part of the title. The rail part is it turns out that first girl that he beat wasn't really the chairman's granddaughter after all, but rather her best friend who was using the liar star to stand in for her because the real one was kidnapped before the school year even started. But then actually, it turns out she's only pretending to be kidnapped for 5 straight years while her family's worried sick, so she can go to a normal school and be normal. Which, you know, fair. I don't want to be here either, so I'm just gonna let myself off the hook for clowning on all the cringy flirting that happens between the games and plot twists and skip right to the rating. Liar Rail gets 2 smoldering wastebaskets full of bootleg Catapult Turtle and Gaia the Dragon Champion cards. Still, as shoddy harem anime go, it could be much worse. Yes, Rent-A-Girlfriend is back once again to prove once again that you can start literally every episode of your harem anime with the main dude literally running in a circle and still trick people into thinking it's finally going somewhere this time. And to be fair, the current arc in which Kazuya kickstarts a movie for Chizuru to star in so her granny can see it before she croaks did come the closest of anything in the manga to convincing me we might finally see some closure. Or, you know, it probably would have if I didn't already know this was coming. Ah! Oh god! Ah! This arc is easily the most competently written and emotional part of this whole story, but it's not really saying much, is it? If you know your harem anime, you know we're about due for a new girl to insert herself into Kazuya's life about now, and the sexy cosplay live streamer who just moved in next door is honestly one of the most gaudy, self-indulgent things I've ever seen a harem author write. The implications of that sentence should terrify you. See, Minnie isn't just another hapless Kazuya simp whose unique set of skills happen to make her invaluable to solving current story problem and then, I don't know, we'll figure out something to do with her probably. Actually, she doesn't even want worst K Taro. No. She's a simp for Rent-A-Girlfriend itself. The author's very own sock puppet otaku, so swept up in the romantic drama at her doorstep that she'll rearrange her schedule and help Kazuya lie to his current girlfriend just to see him get laid. All because, as a super devoted gacha waifu worshiper, she just can't help seeing our pathetic pay-pig protag as the ultimate IRL role model. No, seriously, that's her motivation. She even calls him Shisho. I almost respect the balls it takes to write a fan of your own story into that story. Like, knowing that your audience is already screaming, "You like each other, dipshits, just f*** already!" You just write an otaku into the plot to say that.
I know writers who use subtext and they're all cowards.
If nothing else, it's an impressively brazen way to push the plot forward, is what I'd say if she could actually do that. But remember, oh god, we ain't going nowhere. Rent-A-Girlfriend 3 gets what at first seems like a regular empty garbage can, but then you realize it has no bottom. You feel this oppressive heat rolling out of its dark, empty mouth. And when you strain your ears, you can faintly hear... Is that... screaming? Ah! Luckily, though, I won't have to leave you with that rotten taste in your mouth, because there's another, far more delectable piece of anime cheesecake on this season's menu. I can't promise you Tenpuru, No One Can Live on Loneliness's romance, will actually go anywhere. In fact, I would be willing to bet actual money it won't, but at least the reason it probably won't is quite original and funny. After Akemitsu Akegami's dad abandoned him for a humanitarian mission to share his dick with the women of the world, the boy swore off romance entirely, vowing he'd never be like that ging freak who failed to raise him and probably at least a couple more siblings by this point in the timeline. However, his decades of resolve falter after a near-fatal collision with love at first sight, and before he knows it, he's teetering on the precipice of a college playboy lifestyle. the horror. Akagami figures his only hope of beating his worldly desires is to abandon them along with his worldly possessions and bunker down at a Buddhist temple until this whole late puberty thing blows over. But of course, this is a harem anime, so it turns out that the temple's fallen on hard times and been converted into a naughty nunnery. Also, his deadbeat dad owes those naughty nuns a whole mess of money, so he can't get away from the whole sexy situation even if he wanted to, which we all know he doesn't, and neither do most of his new roommates. Those roommates include, of course, the girl who started Akagami down this dark path of desire to begin with by being so darn irresistibly lovable, Yuzuki Alba, along with her slightly younger and more sexy accident-prone tsundere sister, Tsuyuko. Then we have Mia Kristoff, heiress to a prestigious dynasty of wealthy European perverts who, like Akagami, has come to this temple hoping to purge herself of all those filthy desires, along with her best friend, Kagura Baldwin, who likes to watch. There's also a couple temple residents who don't really fit into the harem, namely Kiki, the Ara auntie nun who's been watching over the girls, and Kurage, the extremely blunt youngest Alba sister whose seemingly sole reason for existing is to cause problems. She's great. If Rent-A-Girlfriend's a throwback to the worst excesses of early 2000s harems, then Tenpuru's a throwback to the best of them. A simple yet thoroughly entertaining story of ridiculous people doing ridiculous things while trying and failing to not think about how ridiculously horny they all secretly are. Which, all told, makes for a ridiculously good time. I give Tenpuru 4 of them big cozy anime bonfires where they burn all the props and shit from the school culture festival, and each of the school cultural festivals you've no doubt seen in anime, only instead of a school culture festival, it's for that penis festival that you've no doubt read a weird Japan article about. Speaking of learning things, I've learned over the years that some of you guys won't learn some things no matter how many times I say them. So to the people preparing to comment that the 100 girlfriends who really love you is peak and thus doesn't belong in this video and or its thumbnail, I have only one thing to say. Trash heaps have peaks too. When I call an anime trash, I'm not saying it's of inherently poor quality. That would be garbage. Easy mistake to make. Trashiness isn't about quality at all. It's about taste, or rather the distinct, often deliberate, and delightful lack thereof. Trash is gaudy, casually offensive, nakedly self-indulgent, pun full-frontally intended there. It doesn't care what polite society thinks it should be doing, only what it wants to do. And often what it wants to do is just throw the audience and or author insert character into a room full of incredibly hot women who are constantly fighting over his dick for the duration of the death game or stay in isekai land or whatever it turns out to be. A lot of trash is also coincidentally garbage, but some trash uses its unparalleled creative freedom to break truly new narrative ground. The whole reason I founded this conceptually dubious restaurant in the first place was to find that kind of trash. And 100 Girlfriends is perhaps the ultimate example of it.
買い入れさせていただいてもよろしいでしょうか。
脳みそ腐ってんのかおめえ。脳みそ腐ってんのか。
言葉もございません。
そんなペータローくん。他に別の女の子を好きになってからって私たちをどこまで優しい方なんですか。脳みその防腐剤箱で必要だこれ。
This show confidently declares the new narrative territory it plans to conquer right there in the title. A harem of 100 girlfriends who really love their protag-kun. Not just 100 cute character designs hanging all jigglily off his arm, though certainly that too, and the jiggling looks incredible. But no, we're talking 100 named, fully backstoried characters with enough depth to form believable, emotionally satisfying relationships with protag-kun. Ones that feel totally unique from all 99 of his other girlfriends. All of the girls Rentaro Ijo zings with. The series uses Hotel Transylvania rules for soulmates.
Alright, maybe just a little.
have incredibly vibrant and distinct personalities, not just in relation to each other, but to the entire modern waifu meta. Some take well-worn tropes in fun new directions, like the starter pack, Karane and Hakari, who are the funniest tsundere and secretly slutty rich girl, respectively, who I've seen since Kaguya.
よーし行くぞからね
別にくすぐったくなんかないんだからね。
そんなもん強がってどうすんだ。なんかいかがわしいことしてるみたいになっちゃってるじゃんか。
Meanwhile, other girls explore less conventional perspectives, like AI-san, who's so robotic in her drive for efficiency, she's literally never had fun before. Or Shizuka, a non-verbal volunteer librarian who communicates exclusively in quotes she's memorized from this light novel series that's clearly her special interest. And don't worry, the story doesn't just treat these girls' issues like one-off gimmicks. Both the show and Rentaro are sincerely interested in understanding what makes each of these girls tick and exploring the unique challenges that come with their unique circumstances. And, more importantly, with helping them overcome those hang-ups in the long term over some very solid gradual character development, because he really loves each and every one of them back. It's easy to get distracted by how goodly animated this show be. Wow. Also, other good qualities like the humor. There's humor, and it's outrageous.
今日はいいお天気ですね。男性の9割は恋人と手をつなぐのが好き。
But if you really look under the hood at just how many moving parts this story has, or how it manages to give all of the different characters it's juggling complex relationships both with Rentaro and each other, what impresses most is just what a Herculean feat of writing the whole thing is. Even in these early stages where the quantity gimmick hasn't really kicked in yet, the quality of these female characters is better than like 95% of all the harems ever, and frankly, 70% of all non-harems shonen and seinen. And Rentaro is the most likable, Chadley, S-tier boyfriend material harem protag possibly ever, at least since Tenchi. Like, miraculously, no matter how many girls there are, there is never, at any moment, a single question of why any of them would want him, even if you take out the whole "because God said so" plot device. All of these relationships just make sense. They make so much sense that it also makes sense why all of his S-tier girlfriend material girlfriends would be willing to share him. Most harems, literally a 20th of this one's size, can't pull that off. I simply have no choice but to award 100 girlfriends 5 solid gold dumpsters full of the complete works of William Shakespeare, with all the old-timey swear words highlighted, plus a load of fireworks.
Chez Garbage regulars have told us they're getting a bit tired of the same old isekai trash each season, so our chefs in back have been working on some exciting new fusion cuisine to freshen things up. On first taste, the new gate bears the distinct flavor of store-brand Sword Art Online. But once you really sink your teeth into it, it reveals the rich, new, slightly different flavor of Walmart Overlord. Yes, for the first time ever, trapped in a VR MMO anime and isekai collide to create something totally new and different. Log Horizon doesn't count. That was a regular MMO that they got both trapped in and isekai'd into at the same time. Completely different.
You are technically correct. The best kind of correct.
So basically, this guy, who's definitely not Kirito, note the red stripes on his trench coat, completely different guy. Please don't sue us, Reki Kawahara. He goes off to solo the big bad of this VR MMO everyone's been trapped in for some amount of time, it's not clear, and he wins. So the logout button comes back, and then he just sort of sits around for a bit, like, to make sure everyone else logs out, I guess. But then, before he can log out, a magic door opens, and now it's 500 years later, and the game is real life. Also, in the 500 years since all the best adventurers got raptured from the perspective of the now sentient NPCs, magic society has regressed substantially. So like any old Joe from the VR MMO would have been the most powerful guy ever here, let alone the Kirito. And this guy is the Kirito. I mean, he's totally not Kirito. So yeah, long story short, his old house from the game has become the most legendary magic shop in the whole wide world, to the point that a letter of introduction from his old NPC assistant's NPC assistant is basically equivalent to a Hunter x Hunter license. And he uses one of those to go smurf as a regular adventurer, killing level 600 monsters by sneezing at them, even when he has his power limiter on, and every girl he meets everywhere, plus a lot of the guys, tries to jump on his dick all the time, including the Adventurers Guild clerk ladies, who are twins.
ちょっと報告しておきたいことがあるんですけど。
承ります。はい、私が承ります。シリカ？何？
Which might seem like every isekai you've ever seen, but remember, they knocked off the last 10 minutes of Aincrad in the first 10 minutes of this thing, so it's different. I give it 3 slightly smoldering bins full of SAO and Overlord merch with the serial numbers filed off. When you hear a title like Chillin' in Another World with my level 2 cheat powers, you instantly get a pretty good idea of what you're getting into. Guy gets isekai'd and he's really OP, so everything goes super easy for him, and all the ladies want his dick. Been there, done that, got so many t-shirts I'm running out of closet space. In this case though, there's a bit more to it than meets the eye. For starters, while our hero, Fleo, does get summoned to a fantastical other world, the world he starts in isn't Earth. He's just a regular old merchant from a slightly different fantasy world, notable mainly for treating his world's underclass of beastman slaves with more respect than your average human. When he arrives in the other world, he's delighted to discover that slavery isn't really a thing there, though on the flip side, he was explicitly summoned as a conscript in a big ugly race war between man and demon, so that's not great. Lucky for him, his meager stats aren't high enough to be of much use to the human king, especially compared to the other hero they summoned, who starts in the low 900s, so he gets shipped off to a parcel of land deep in the countryside where he can't embarrass the royalty with evidence of their magic up. I mean, he's not that lucky. The king did bait his starting gear with a monster lure in hopes he'd just disappear quietly, but after stabbing the first group of slimes that jumped him, he hits level 2, at which point his stats become literally infinite. So it all works out in the most conveniently contrived way possible. Shortly thereafter, he meets his obligatory harem of fantasy hotties, but also a feisty dog demon girl who refuses to let them become a harem because she's his wife, damn it, and a damn fine wife at that. Like any season that didn't have Holo in it, top tier best girl contender. And then they all just sort of hang around their cozy little homestead, farming, fighting psycho bears, and occasionally entertaining the Demon King when he stops by to hit on one of the not a harem girls, all while trying their best to not get involved in that whole race war thing. With occasional cutaways to show the king and other hero being jackasses while the nice princess tries to fix them. Basically, wherever shield hero zigs, this show zags, and even if it's not particularly fun to look at most of the time, yeesh, that animation, it is frequently fun to watch as a result, and pretty darn funny to boot. I give Chillin' in Another World 3 big breaths of fresh air, sealed inside of airtight trash bags and held aloft by a small steady flame in a clever trash dirigible contraption. Yes, it's finally time to tuck into the legendary trash that's finally back after so many seasons away. What? No, not the f***ing Harry Potter incest thing. better, but still no. Obviously, I'm talking about Konosuba Season 3. The trashy isekai comedy about trash human beings and one trash goddess perpetually failing upwards in a world that's far too good for them. The new season picks up where the movie left off, with Kazuma trying to overcome the trauma of being molested by various monster ladies and dying. He got better by running off to a convent to become a monk. Though along the way, the party encounters a new kind of plant-based monster that preys on empathy and trust. Sort of like Friren's demons, which really sucks for her, because Kazuma has very little of either.
殺すの
ウケるこれ完璧だわ。
After digging up the presumably less paranoid isekai hero she met before them, the party also finds the infinite gold-generating treasure that guy reincarnated with. So Kazuma says screw the convent and heads back to town to spend some of that cash, but of course it immediately gets stolen, so they're back to their old hijinks. Though little do they realize that was actually the first step on a larger quest to recover a whole bunch of isekai cheat items that Aqua sort of lost track of because she really sucked at her old job. Also, before they can really get back to their typical adventuring shenanigans, they've got to get through regaling the crown princess with tales of those shenanigans without getting executed for a breach of courtly etiquette, which, knowing this crew, is gonna be a greater challenge than any of the demon generals they've taken down so far.
ちょ話して今からとっておきの芸をはじめまして王女様我が名はメス
And if you don't know this crew, man, I cannot recommend highly enough that you correct that at your earliest convenience. Because Konosuba's last 2 seasons are some of the funniest, most charmingly animated TV out there, and this new one more than lives up to that legacy. It's so rare to see anime continue after this long away, let alone do so without falling off at all. But Konosuba remains a prime example of what 5 golden dumpster tier trash looks like. Actually, screw that. This show deserves its own properly godly trash rating. Aqua out of 10. With that said, I hope you saved room for a second, even trashier dessert. Because no matter how useless and horrible the waifus of Konosuba might be, at least none of them are predators, just Kazuma.
その前に俺が何みたいだって？
昔のお兄様みたいだと。
もう一度言ってください。お願いします。
お兄様みたいです。
もう一度。
お兄ちゃんみたい。
Wait, sorry, my mistake. I wrote this segue before watching season 3, episode 5.
あれ？なんだかお姉さんのアイリスを見る目が。そっちか！真面目でお堅いやつだと思ったのに、そっちだったか！
Underestimated you, Konosuba. But Claire the Castle Guard is only a minor attracted character, whereas Silpha, the head maid in I Was Reincarnated as the 7th Prince so I can take my time perfecting my magical ability, gets the most screen time out of anyone in that show, besides, of course, the very young titular protag-kun that she and all the other maids, the king really should have screened better, are constantly drooling over and fantasizing about. Don't worry too much though. Mentally speaking, Prince Lloyd's like 30, having previously died as a magic-obsessed commoner and gotten his wish to be reborn in a noble family with innate magical talent, so one could argue he's the real creep here, were he not actually a very gentlemanly little fella who politely refused to even breastfeed. And anyway, he's way too horny for magic to even think about the ethics of this whole situation, which is the right mindset to be in if you want to enjoy this anime. Which I honestly think quite a lot of you will, despite how I chose to segue into it, because once you look past that admittedly quite sticky sticking point, you're gonna see a whole lot of this.
国戦法だ。勉強になったか。何？
especially once Lloyd makes Grimoire, the ancient demon sealed within his castle's forbidden magic library that you saw him fighting just there, his fluffy little bitch, and starts using his demonic powers to find even crazier magic system exploits, which he then tries out on even more deserving bad guys, treating ancient sociopathic liches and sex-pesty demons like they're ants, and he's got a magic magnifying glass. It's basically One Punch Man for guys who'd rather read lots of books than do lots of push-ups, and also guys who've always wanted to see a Chinese dress with built-in booty shorts, which is worn by a girl with a crush on a magically aged-up version of the prince, just by the by. So if you can't stop thinking about that thing I told you not to think about, there's your default best girl.
全然見てないあるそれより私の気を引く方が簡単
No, you know what? Default feels really reductive. Tao is a genuinely great character. All of these characters are a ton of fun, especially Grim, that fuzzy little tsundere, and even the ones you'd probably catch doing a ukulele apology video in a different universe. Plus, the magic system would be genuinely interesting, even if Lloyd wasn't taking it to hilarious extremes, and the extremes the show goes to are frequently straight up hilarious. I overlooked this anime on this season's ones to watch precisely because all the everything turned me away from it, and I just didn't see much more here than a shameless power fantasy. But having watched a lot more of it, it absolutely is that, but it's the joyous, free kind of shameless that I built this restaurant to celebrate. I give it 5 magic school dumpsters full of weirdly tight overall shorts and grimoires crackling with arcane fire. Speaking of bite-sized stuff, every item on tonight's menu comes with an optional side of plus-size elf. An anime about a world that's got portals to other worlds and sometimes elf girls, plus other types of girl come through those, and then they get addicted to processed foods because they don't have those in fantasy worlds. But then the portal uses a weight sensor, so they gotta work that off to go back, or to use magic without their magic thong that they need to use magic snapping on their badonkadonks, which is obviously a problem because you can't do magic without your magic thong. Also, there's this massage therapy nutritionist type guy who helps them lose that weight and sees them naked a lot because their clothes are made of tissue paper. It's one of those anime. But, you know, for chubby chasers, who frankly are one of the most underserved kinds of pervert in the entire anime community, so more power to them, I say. Aside from some surprisingly good health and wellness tips every episode, that really is all this anime has to offer. It's basically empty calories, but that's exactly what you want from a basket of French fries at the end of the day. Sure, maybe those fries are a wee bit misshapen sometimes due to the guys making them barely having time to sleep between all-day shifts at their sub-minimum wage job, but they get the job done, and you don't gotta buy the Blu-ray to see their nipples. By the way, in those last few sentences, French fries was a clever euphemism for big fat anime titties. I give plus-size elf 3 novelty trash can shaped bread baskets. If that's too spicy a side for your palate, we also offer Pseudo Horror as a substitute, which isn't a short anime, but it may as well be for how much plot there actually is in it. It's also not particularly trashy, just a cute little comedy about theater kids flirting via anime tropes, but you're the one who wanted a blander side dish. Don't blame me. 1 bread basket. If you're looking for something in a more medium heat range, 2.5D Seduction might be just the thing. Remember how my dress-up darling surprised everyone by not being a bog-standard harem thing about a stereotypical otaku loser surrounded by insanely hot, mostly naked amateur models for some reason? Well, you can finally forget what they took from us, because this is that bog-standard harem thing. Anime Club Senpai Masamune is a hardcore otaku who's sworn off
treacherous 3D women for the 2D purity of Liliel, the scantily clad angel from his favorite childhood battle anime he was way too young for, who's ever loyal to its protagonist, Ashford. Meanwhile, love interest Kohai Lilisa wants to be Liliel and is quite impressed with his cast-off figure collection because they make such great costume references. Also, if he wouldn't mind too much, she'd very much like it if he'd take some sexy pictures of her, please. All of which puts his long-term life plan to die a virgin for his waifu in serious jeopardy. Though not that serious, since they're both dense enough to have their own event horizons. But further complicating matters and filling out the harem is this other childhood Kohai he used to play Ashford and Liliel with on the playground way back in the day, before she moved away after realizing that he only had eyes for his waifu, even though she started doing her hair like that waifu. So obviously, since that wasn't enough to get his attention, she decided to become a famous model entirely so Senpai would notice her, and now she's back at the school to see if that worked. It didn't, but they both think she'd be great as the succubus side chick from the anime, so long story short, they end up faking orgasms together on the clubroom floor. Though, tragically, they cannot share the resulting pictures anywhere because that would go against her contract. You know, her modeling contract that she has entirely because she's obsessed with this one guy who she can't stop thinking about how he ignored her for anime. That is seriously her backstory. Also, their sexy teacher is a secret cosplayer, though she does not seem to be interested in Protag-kun in any way, which is an important distinction. We will get to why that is an important distinction when we're talking about another anime this season. And credit where it's due, speaking as a cosplay boyfriend, this show does get a lot of the little details about the hobby and its culture right. And it's got some very solid women supporting women vibes, which we love to see. But let's not split hairs here. This is pure male wish fulfillment harem anime nonsense, which we also love to see, even if it is a little toned down from the manga. 2.5D Seduction gets 3 flaming dumpsters full of sexy cosplay outfits and props. You kinda need a palate cleanser after a heap of garbage that pungent, and a shower. Luckily, Cafe Terrace and its goddesses is back to serve up another spicy season of classic harem comfort food. We're now out of the awkward early phase where all the girls treat their live-in love interest like something unpleasant they tracked in off the street and start catching actual feelings, which is really the make or break point for this sort of harem, and in a refreshingly straightforward move to keep the story moving, the show has opted to just have them all openly declare their crushes to each other at a little house meeting that they have. Except the tsundere, of course, because she's the tsundere. Also, the one who does all the Street Fighter references and comic relief may actually have the mind of a child, so no one's sure whether to count hers. But at this point, it's all a matter of tropey formalities before this thing congeals into a proper competitive polycule. Well, tropes, and the tsundere's gotta realize she's more of a tsune sadist. Not to be confused with a sado dere. That's when a girl acts like a sadist when she's not being all dere to Protag-san. Oka's default mode is still very much tsune. Sadism's how she shows her affection.
早くどけよ、Oka。
隼人君です。
お前な。
いいわね、その顔もゾクゾクする。ブヒって言いなさい。ブヒって。
With the will they won't they's resolving into who will firsts and the titular cafe's business booming though, the show does kind of need a new conflict to keep things interesting. And the one that it's cooked up is just, I mean, so
There's an evil harem now. This corporate-ass cafe opens up down the road run by this old real estate asshole who hates Hayato's granddad and wants to tear down his house and business out of spite. So, in order to undermine Familia's reputation, this new cafe, Family, has hired 5 waitresses who look exactly like the goddesses and has them doing just the most insulting impressions of them, while also wearing much sluttier McDonald's versions of their iconic handmade uniforms. And of course, all those girls are eventually going to fall for Hayato too, and just make that whole side of things crazier. But for the moment, these waifus are out for blood. Business blood. And I'm honestly impressed with how unfucking hinged this show has managed to get without any sci-fi or fantasy elements, just a story about a Tokyo University student running a small business so the hot girls who were squatting in his grandpa's house don't become homeless. It's truly carrying on the spirit of that mid-2000s anything goes harem wave, which is why I'm upgrading Cafe Terrace's rating this season to 4 modest restaurant waste bins full of slightly stale yet once delicious breadsticks and half-eaten cake. Plus, someone lit a fire in the napkin dispenser. Alia sometimes hides her feelings in Russian is an exquisitely crafted piece of rom-com trash that deftly swerves around countless will they won't they cliches by simply having its titular girl tell the nerd she likes that she likes him up front. In Russian, because she's half Russian and thinks that he as a cute Japanese boy won't understand what she's saying. But what she doesn't know is he had a half Russian childhood friend and thus speaks the language fluently. So for once, the shoe is on the other foot. Or it ends up there at least, after a suspiciously long and well-animated stocking putting on scene. Alia doesn't suspect his secret though, because he has a fake childhood friend covering for the real one who happens to be on the student council with her and also happens to be his secret sorta estranged sister who pretends to be his childhood's friend at school because, look, their relationship's complicated.
Good morning, my brother.
たった今お前のせいでグッドじゃなくなったわ。
なんで？反応しちゃうから。
死ね。
But then, Masachika is a complicated man, a beacon of genuine charisma amid a sea of wet blankets. It completely makes sense that the cool beauty from Russia would have a thing for him, not to mention his sister, and that he'd have a certain sort of effect on many other types of girl too.
はい。素晴らしい気迫に思わず子宮が震えました。
We have quite a few spicy items on tonight's menu, some quite a bit spicier than this, but of all those bold flavors, this one might just be my favorite. It's complex, mature, with many different intermingling notes. Every character has a distinctive, entertaining voice, and the plot moves at a surprisingly brisk pace with genuinely surprising twists, elevating what are fundamentally the lowest possible stakes with confident, witty presentation. If you enjoyed Kaguya-sama Love is War, this show hits a lot of similar notes, only with way more panty shots, which you won't hear me complaining about. It's also got some shades of Rascal Does Not Dream of Bunny Girl Senpai. It's just a ton of fun all around. I give it 5 solid gold dumpsters full of fireworks. I don't want to leave you hanging on all that edge I promised though, so let's see if we can find it elsewhere, like in this show with a scary skeleton man on the cover. That's gotta be edgy, right? The strongest magician in the Demon King's army is a human is about that guy from the title I just read, who, yes, I'm sorry to say, is CGI like 90% of the time, and yes, it always looks at least that bad from every angle. And there's so many other 3D models, and none of them are better. But in Ike's defense, he's got to keep that horribly rendered mask on so nobody figures out that he's not a demon, at least not until he finishes his quest to build a world where everyone can get along. A goal he starts toward by taking over a human city with his big demon army, then putting the demons in the city next to the people whose home they just sacked and partially destroyed, and saying, hey, get along. And then they do.
It just works. The Strongest Magician sometimes threatens to become a kinda genuinely interesting anime about fantasy politics and civic planning and shit, but then it just keeps shoving all that to the background, while in the foreground, the annoying ditzy maid and the horny Gyaru succubus chase each other around the dinner table yelling, "He's mine! No, he's mine!" back and forth, while the fat pig dude who only ever opens his mouth to glaze up the protag is like, "Aiku-sama, your dick is so big! How are you so handsome and such a genius at the same time?" Like they're in the local theater putting on a production of Overlord. And then, when he actually does get a chance to flex his tactical genius on screen by outwitting an opponent in an evenly matched war game, his brilliant solution is invent guns. Which he doesn't even do himself. He just has the idea that guns might be useful, and then someone else makes them for him. As you can see, I was not exaggerating with my Pigman impression. The best thing I can say about this show is it finally made me get around to playing Tyranny, a half-finished Obsidian CRPG, the best kind of Obsidian CRPG, that actually explores all the cool ideas about managing a more equitable evil empire that Strongest Magician just sort of hints at, then leaves on the floor while it goes off to do more anime bullshit. I give it 2 wastebaskets full of Fantasy City zoning maps with obscene doodles just all over them. I'm saving the best trash for last tonight, so let's explore more of our romance options first with Makein, Too Many Losing Heroines. How'd that get in the trash pile? I mean, I guess meta-commentary on anime rom-com tropes is a little bit trashy conceptually, but all them cinematic angles are clearly art. Whoa! Whoa! Okay, madam, this is a YouTube video. You cannot... Sir, could you please stop Oof. I thought Dan Da Dan was supposed to be next season. And that's not even the most out-of-pocket teacher at this school. No, like, that's still not even the half of it. She is straight up committing crimes. I recommended Makein on the ones to watch for its remarkably fleshed out characters and razor-sharp dialogue, and I'm recommending it here because the characters spouting that dialogue are remarkably fleshed out trash. Sometimes non-childhood friend-type homewrecker trash, sometimes otaku trash.
一応3年くらい前からナローに連載してるんだけど、これ知ってるっていうか読んでます。
まずは三島が滑腹自殺して異世界転生するの。太宰はそれを追って玉川上水で受水する。ただ18禁だから君たちには見せられない。
What's real crazy is she almost described an actual anime there. Although Mishima isn't in the Osamu Dazai isekai No Longer Allowed in Another World, and it's only rated 14A for excessive elf titty. I'm honestly not even sure if I can call that one trash, since it's a surprisingly literary deconstruction of the isekai genre for a comedy that hinges on the Japanese equivalent of Kurt Cobain jokes. Or maybe not surprisingly, given the choice of protag, who's a famous author if you're not familiar with the Japanese literary canon and or Bungou Stray Dogs. But then I'm kinda in the same boat with Makein, and my philosophy is any animator who puts that much effort into tummy shading knows exactly what they're making, so I'm happy to award Too Many Losing Heroines 5 golden dumpsters full of fireworks. And the Dazai Sekai does have a big tentacle monster in episode 1, so I guess that knows what it is too. It only gets 3 golden dumpsters though. Animation could have been better.
Okay, I admit, even after that last one, that got a little too spicy at the end there. I think we're due for a wholesome harem palate cleanser.
How did this work when Sexy didn't?
Who knows? Maybe this is what we need.
Tying the knot with an Amagami sister follows a diligent young orphan boy aiming to become a doctor named Uryu Kamihate, who moves into a local shrine to buckle down and study for Kyoto University's med school exams. Though he quickly learns there really is no such thing as free room and board when the head priest issues an ultimatum. If he wants to keep living there, he's gonna have to marry one of the 3 gorgeous shrine maiden sisters, Yai, Yuna, and Asahi Amagami. You really gotta feel sorry for the guy. Name a character who's suffered more. I dare ya. For real though, not even the characters in the show are willing to humor his poor me act over this for more than an episode. Bro's foster mom straight up calls it a harem, which finally gives me an excuse to address the all too common customer complaint that I've been saying harem wrong.
せっかくの美少女巫女さんハーレムなのに、なんで戻ってきたのかね、君は。
Hear that?
ハーレム、ハーレム、ハーレム。
That's how they say harem in Japan, where the harem comedy was invented. Also, even in English, it's a loan word anyway, and the original Arabic pronunciation's closer to harem. So you can stop leaving Yelp reviews about that now, please and thank you. Now, at first blush, that is the blush that happens when he opens the door and sees them all naked the first time, tying the knot seems about as basic a harem comedy as harem comedies get. From the tsundere nice girl brat waifu lineup to the plot about the place where the harem stuff happens not having enough money, so everyone's got to band together and save it, much of it feels like it's just going through the same motions as 1,000 other anime, even if those motions are generally well animated and backed by writing that clearly comes from an artist with plenty of life experience and real wisdom.
I know what that means. If you need it today, then tomorrow's the real deadline, right?
But as it goes on, it becomes clear that there's a lot more going on in this humble little harem thing than first meets the eye. Straight up supernatural stuff that gradually escalates from subtly challenging Uryu's Reddit atheist attitudes about the gods to, well, the mystery is half the fun here, so I'll leave it at that for now. Though I will say that some of those elements have hinted we might be getting an actual honest to Haruhi harem ending in spite of the pick-a-wife setup, which should get the true trash connoisseurs out there really excited. I give Amagami Sisters 3 oil drums blazing under a cozy underpass next to a 6-pack of beers and a stack of those non-jump type shonen magazines that they put pictures of bikini girls on the cover in order to bait in new readers. Even now that you've had your fill of trench-coated fantasy edgelords, though, I've got a feeling you still might be craving some more of my patented, absurdly specific segues, which is why I've had the chefs in back line up a second serving of underpowered fantasy adventurer running the world's most powerful clan while all the ladies chase his dick anime for you to enjoy tonight. Let this grieving soul retire. And when I say underpowered, I actually mean it this time. Cry Andri doesn't have some underrated skill that everyone thinks sucks because they just haven't figured out the right way to use it yet. He actually just straight up sucks at being an adventurer. However, he did have the astounding misfortune to be childhood friends with 6 of the most overpowered adventurers on the whole planet, all of whom think very highly of him for no apparent reason. So despite his repeated insistence that he's really not cut out for this and almost died back there actually, and please guys, I think it'd be best if I just went back home and got a normal job already, they have decided to make him the leader of their elite adventuring party, Grieving Souls, which he picked that stupid edgelord name for in hopes that that would finally make them fire him, and also all of the other elite parties that have joined their clan under them. And at this point, he's kind of just got so much riding on his hilariously underqualified ass that he's just got to run with it, stay behind his desk as much as possible, and hope he doesn't get himself or one of his many subordinates who inexplicably look up to him killed. Especially not the cute apprentice thief in the booty shorts who assumes his every fuck-up is part of some as yet unrevealed master plan and constantly rides his dick for it.
使徒一人じゃ死んじゃうかもしれないじゃん。ねえ、私心配なの。だから
No, sorry, I meant metaphorical dick riding. Also, wrong booty shorts thief. The one thing he has going for him is that over the years, he's amassed quite the collection of extremely dangerous and over-specialized magic artifacts, which he uses judiciously to make up for his complete lack of actual skill. And that lends the show's action a very fun, improvisational feel that gels really well with its comedy. I give Let This Grieving Soul Retire 3 flaming banana stands. This anime before in bits and pieces of other anime. Maybe with more of an emphasis on magic or skills than crafting systems, but that's just a difference in spice flavor, not a fundamental change to the stat screen jerk-off fantasy recipe. It's not the best one of these things by any stretch, but with decent animation and charming enough characters, it's far from the worst either. I give it 2 crates full of low-grade crafting materials and vendor trash. For those seeking something a little different from their isekai, Headhunted to Another World, From Salaryman to Big 4, should have been the season's go-to show. The setup is pure gold. When the Demon Lord needs a water elemental to fill the 4th Heavenly King slot in his evil army, he uses otherworldly magic to summon forth the perfect man for the job. Overseas manager Denosuke Uchimura. His powers include micromanaging logistics on a shoestring budget, finding compromises in fraught business negotiations, building sustainable corporate culture in foreign locations, and absolutely no magic or fighting skills whatsoever. But that's what the big titty dragon lady, the small titty cat girl, and the mysterious person in the freaky diving suit are for. His job is making sure their armies don't fall apart on the way to the front line. And when you're balancing the clashing needs and cultures of ogres, demons, minotaurs, and more, that's no mean feat, even if it's not the kind of feat we typically have death battle debates about. Unfortunately, the negotiations he gets called in for don't really live up to that hype of his business genius. The problems he's asked to solve are mostly basic issues of miscommunication or entrenched mismanagement, and the solutions are equally simple, easily reached after grabbing a single drink in his Mind Palace izakaya with whatever co-worker happens to be helping him that week. Also, a lot of sexy monster ladies end up throwing themselves at him within like 5 minutes of meeting him. So, it's not quite the total genre subversion many were hoping for when they first heard of it, but it is still a fun little fantasy comedy thing with an extra emphasis on the comedy, and a cast consisting of consenting adults, which is still pretty darn fresh by isekai standards. Headhunted to Another World gets 2 big breaths of almost fresh air, sealed inside of airtight trash bags and held aloft by a small steady flame in a clever, trash dirigible contraption. Now, if you're okay with an isekai that's not all that fresh, but still has a hero who gets fresh repeatedly in like every episode, the daily life of a middle-aged online shopper in another world may just be the anime for you. After getting transported to another world for, and I quote, no apparent reason, professional illustrator Kenichi Hamada also finds he doesn't have any OP fighting or magic skills, but what he does have is unlimited storage space and access to Amazon.com, with automatic gold to yen conversion and Prime-enabled same-second shipping. So any monster he can't take on with muscles or magic, he can just one-shot by summoning a backhoe. That is, when he's not doing backshots in hoes, from furries to noble ladies to tavern wenches, drawn to his laid-back artist charisma and massive piles of money that he made through his Amazon reseller hustle. The 2001 A Space Odyssey montage that kicks his whole isekai journey off with a false start when he survives an overwork-related heart attack, followed by him just sort of randomly poofing out of his kitchen one day, sets the tone for the show perfectly. This anime is irreverent, quirky, and not particularly interested in spending time on setup that it could be spending on wish fulfillment instead. If you want to see a protag-kun who's not just another blank slate teenager, get rich and get his wet, it won't be particularly pretty or narratively satisfying, but this show will give you that, and some good laughs along the way. I give it 3 crackling Amazon warehouse dumpsters full of fursuits, farming equipment, and prophylactics. Speaking of Studio Dean, derogatory. I'm a noble on the brink of ruin, so I might as well try mastering magic. Seems like it's going for a world record with its protagonist who masters silent multicasting and creates a clone run international international instant ramen business by the end of episode 1, forgets all about that business, becomes a B-rank adventurer, and gets knighted for his deeds by the middle of episode 2, has 2 pet women plus a princess disguised as a maid chasing his by the end of that episode. Then the princess gives him his own barony at the start of the next one, and by the end of it, he's soulbound to a dragon, and the princess has given him a massive pile of gold, plus the Order of the Phoenix, no relation, as an apology for not being able to pull him up the social ladder faster. And I kind of glossed over how he also gets his own pocket dimension and 3 different almighty magic grimoires along the way. I'd say we have I was reincarnated as the 7th prince so I can take my time perfecting my magical ability at home, but frankly, if my mom mistook this show for that one, I'd put her in a home. It's ugly as shit, boring as dirt, and stupid as your mom. Sorry, that was uncalled for. I'm just really upset about the hour of my life I'll never get back from this thing. I give it one of the exact same dumpster as 7th Prince, but this time we commissioned it from Fiverr. As an apology to the mothers out there and any other ladies feeling neglected by our anime chefs, we've got a nice heaping helping of isekai slop for her up next that'll make your lives feel just as wasted as us boys. Promise of Wizard is a popular, profitable otome gacha thing that's being turned into an anime now because they want to sell you more merch. Basically, think Ensemble Stars, except instead of transferring in as the only female producer in training at an all-hot boys idol school, this unremarkable brown-haired blank slate lady gets isekai recruited as the magic quartermaster of an all-hot boys wizard army barrack. How unremarkable, you ask? Her personality profile says she likes cats and dislikes conflict, and after seeing an entire medieval army appear at the top of her apartment elevator and being rescued by several handsome men who can literally fly, the clue that tells her she may not be in Kansai anymore is seeing a spiral staircase.
やっぱり変だ。うちのマンションこんな階段なかったのに。
Her duties as the sage include holding the hot boys' hands so their magic works better, and literally doing gacha pulls to replace any wizards killed in their annual battles with the moon. Not moon aliens or moon monsters, just the moon. Every year, the moon tries to do a Majora's Mask, and they all get together and kick its ass. Although this year, it kicked their ass back pretty hard, so she's got to do 10 gacha pulls right at the start. And if that sounds cool to you, or really dumb, don't worry about it, because the anime isn't really about that, except the gacha pull part. The whole 3rd episode's about her doing a gacha pull. But other than that, it's about delivering endless exposition about that stuff I just said, while gradually introducing all of its way too many husbandos and making sure they all get roughly equal screen time to prevent a deadly Fujoshi riot. Which, with 20 main wizards plus many handsome side characters, is definitely easier said than done. Hence why all the boys spend all their time saying things instead of doing stuff, cramming every dialogue nook and monologue cranny they can find with details about their backstories and motivations that everyone speaking should already know, like, well, if it isn't Crumbles McFumbles, the only magic pie chef to ever stick his dick in a cursed quiche and live to tell the tale. That's right, famous enchanted diner magnate Jack Von Box. But let me tell you something. One of these days, I will f*** your grandma's famous apple pie, and there's nothing you can do about it. Please write 10,000 fanfics about us, ladies. And then after like 3 episodes of that, she does the gacha pull, so now there's 10 more guys we gotta learn about. Though, thankfully, keeping track of them all is made just a scooch easier by the fact that they're all named after famous fairy tales, books, and poems, such as the powerful former Wizard King Oz, the magic Shota twins Snow and White, and the secretary of the central country.
私は中央の国の書記官クックロビンです。
Okay, I lied. It doesn't actually help that much. I was just trying to cue up the
クックロビンです。
clip. Because, and I cannot emphasize this enough, there is a major recurring character in this anime whose actual given name is
クックロビン
I give it one magic goblet full of disgusting gotcha slop. The first time I ever heard the title, even given the worthless appraiser class I'm actually the strongest, I knew I'd be in for a pretty good bad time. While it's hardly the first edgy loner with a Final Fantasy job that everyone thinks sucks, but it rocks actually, and that turns him into a Harem King anime, it might be the most meat-headed example of that concept to date. 'Cause what do you mean people in this RPG universe think appraisal is worthless? Are they just unaware of hidden stats and equipment bonuses? Has no one ever thought, gosh, sure would be nice to know that monster's stats and abilities before it tries to kill me? Is literally every person in this world me as a 7-year-old attack mashing my way through Pokemon Blue? Because that is the only way the premise described in this title even remotely makes sense. And the really wild thing is, none of those obvious advantages are what Protag-kun uses to become super OP and stunt on everyone who laughed at him. He just gets a magic eye made of World Tree sap in episode 2 that lets him copy other people's skills and stop time, and the exposition dump lady's just like, yeah, I don't know, that's all appraisal somehow. He also gets a magic titty elf wood nymph lady with healing powers who lives inside that eye, but then the sarcastic exposition dumper wizard lady, who's basically her adopted mom, even though her elf titties are much smaller, starts living in his other eye, so he can't really do nothing with her because mom's always watching. But still, on the whole, this situation is a vast improvement over his past life of picking through garbage and monster corpses because nobody ever used this entire world's one shared brain cell to think of anything better for people who can instantly identify literally anything they see to do. So instead of using his new powers to take revenge on the bully who left him to die in that dungeon, he's just like, thanks, bro. I got me a smoking hot eyeball wife now, so I'ma go fill out my wood nymph harem Pokedex. Peace. And that's, you know, definitely preferable to the school shootery vibes of shit like Failure Frame and Berserk of Gluttony. Chad move, honestly. But the sheer tonal whiplash of the show's first few episodes had me feeling like Dimple the first time he came over to Mob's place. Like, here's how it started. And here's how it's going.
こんな小さな可愛い亀を見殺しにするなんてな。ビナのプライドに殺されるんだ。
愛さんの私はお嫁さん2号になりますので。
私と結婚してほしい。
Also, I can't help feeling extremely disappointed that he turned down that rich husband offer. Bro was this close to joining Baccarina and Shinji Evangelion in the legendary pantheon of pansexual harem havers, but he just had to pussy out at the last minute. Light novel and harem writers, I say this as a straight man. Give us one bi-slut Protag-kun who hits on literally anything that moves, especially his brooding rival character, and I guarantee you will make $1 billion. I give Appraiser class 3 flaming dumpsters full of all the strategy guides that nobody in this universe has ever read. Unfortunately, while we did manage to swerve a full-on trenchcoat mafia anime this season, we're still not out of the woods when it comes to school-related controversy fantasy, because the next anime about a guy with an underrated skill set who shows all those jerks by getting a sexy harem is I left my A-rank party to help my former students reach the dungeon depths. Tragically, another one of those anime titles that tells you everything you need to know about its plot. Credit where it's due, the reasons that Red Mage Yuke Feldio leaves his A-rank party are abnormally believable for this sort of thing. His guildmates simply undervalue his item-related logistical skills and thus give him a lower cut of their earnings than he feels he deserves, so he bounces to a new dungeoneering startup and strikes it rich. And the setting the story takes place in, where adventurers broadcast their quests and raids on magic Twitch streams for education and entertainment purposes, is moderately novel as these things go. Basically, it's just a cheap plot device to make a shitty old party angry and jealous while they get rich and famous, and the world building makes zero sense if you think about it for more than a second. But as for the characters going on those adventures, can you say we have Rudius Grey Rat's wives at home? Wait, I already used that joke. and Walmart and Temu and Wish. The Dollar Tree Gray Rat family? Is that anything? But also, Bandai Namco Pictures did actually animate stuff changing shape and size on its way out of magic bags, which is a nice little flourish you don't often see in fantasy things. And I have seen far more boring anime about guys winning fights by stacking buffs and debuffs. But I've also seen far more entertaining anime about way better ideas for power sets, and at least one infinitely better anime about dungeon crawling logistics that didn't remind me of my 9th grade gym teacher's wife he met at work. I Left My A-Rank Party gets 3 flaming trash cans full of episode 1 Onizuka. Still, stories about underpowered guys who turn out to be OP actually can be a whole shitload lazier than either of those, and a whole fuckload shittier. And Bogus Skill Fruit Master, about that time I became able to eat unlimited numbers of skill fruits that kill you, is a prime example of both. As the title suggests, it's set in a generic RPG world where everyone gets their generic RPG skills by eating magic skill fruits. Also, they make you come a little. But if you ever eat more than one of them, it kills you on the spot. So when the Kirito's skill turns out to be a farming buff that makes fruit grow faster, that instantly dashes his childhood dream of becoming a famous adventurer. And even worse, his hot childhood friend that he shared that dream with gets the best sword fighter skill ever, so she gets to immediately join the top adventuring guild, and he's pretty much never gonna see her again. Or so he thinks, until 3 months later when the lolly he inexplicably adopted as a farmhand makes dinner with the skill fruits he started farming but didn't tell her they were deadly poison, and instead of dying, he gets an even better best sword fighter skill ever, plus his pet lolly orphan gets a convenient appraisal skill that can instantly tell him what every other random skill he'll get from eating fruits does. So they set out to do some more adventures, save his childhood friend from the famous and handsome hero who's secretly an abusive douchebag and treats his party like a personal harem. Then they do some more adventures, eat some more fruits, he gets some more skills, they meet some new ladies who find out how strong and cool he is, so they all want his now too, and his party becomes a personal harem, but not like how that bad guy had a personal harem and yeah. You know that cooking tutorial I just put out? The problem with power fantasy anime? This anime is literally all of those problems and nothing but those problems. I give it one wastebasket full of cracker crumbs. But if you think that's the least likely anime knockoff you're gonna see this year, buddy, I got news for you. Our first horny and harem-y option of the evening is an honest-to-toad sage Himoto Umaru-chan knockoff in the year of our Hokage 2025. I'm Living with an Otaku Kunoichi is a show for anyone who's ever thought the OG Gamer Gremlin Pet Simulator anime didn't have nearly enough random screaming in it. Also, poorly drawn spandex and sexual tension. Instead of siblings with polar opposite personalities begrudgingly cohabitating, now it's a story about a nerdy gamer guy taking in a sexy gamer ninja girl and doing all her cooking and cleaning for her in exchange for she does a shitty fight scene with a monster once an episode. A girl who's super hardcore about all his hobbies and spends all his money on stuff he'd probably buy anyway, but is just not hardcore enough to never threaten his male ego at Tekken.
つまり対戦格闘ゲームも超うまい。じゃあ強すぎ。
Also, instead of incest is nasty, now the only thing stopping them from f***ing is some tsundere nonsense and a nebulously defined ninja code of conduct that barely comes up and doesn't really matter. Except, of course, when it's used as an excuse to add new waifus to the bingo sheet, like the angry Twin Tails lolly one or the shy clumsy one. Admittedly, some of those waifus are pretty unique, like the crypto millionaire Ara Ara landlady one or the teenage convenience store clerk who spends all her free time stalking her neighbors and speculating about their relationships. She's kind of funny, actually, probably the most entertaining part of the whole show, but that's not really saying a whole lot when the last waifu on that bingo sheet is the crazy psycho lesbian. I'm not exaggerating. In Japanese, her character profile literally reads Kureiji Saikorezu. But wait, there's a plot twist. The insane masochist stalker who won't stop Ahegao drooling whenever she takes battle damage is secretly a cross-dressing man who can make It's out of ninja magic. Because why settle for being homophobic when you can also be transphobic? I know much of the show's target audience of anime gooners isn't going to care about that part or might even see it as a positive, but if there's someone out there who can actually goon to this animation, I think we should study his brain in a lab. Otaku Kunoichi gets one AliExpress Umaru Kigurumi and some night market ninja stars. Luckily, that's not the only girl trash this season has on offer, and the new reverse harem thing, Anyway I'm Falling in Love with You, is still not great about the whole consent thing, honestly. But it only takes her a few episodes to decide she's kinda into that, and the bar is sitting somewhere in the Earth's mantle right now, so we'll take what we can get. Kinda like Protag-chan's doing with that childhood friend after getting swerved by sexy swim club senpai. Though, of course, he's just the first of her 4 insanely hot childhood friends, who are all gonna start hitting on her by the time the show's over. Well, they're supposed to be insanely hot. The animation being what it is, you kind of got to take the show's word for it. But that's par for the course with a lot of the harems we cover on here. Point is, shameless wish fulfillment is what these shows are for. Although, this one does try to pretend like it's about something more sometimes, with a flashback framing device that sees Protag-chan working as a manga editor in her late 20s, looking back on her high school days and seeing that they were a lot more Kira sparkly than she realized at the time, just like her manga editor told her all those years ago. For that is the tragedy of youth, you see. We never know what we've got until it's gone, which would be a much more convincing message if she wasn't having regular sleepovers with the 4 hottest guys in school who are so hot they all have their own fan clubs, yet never so much as look at any other girl, and also sometimes they work overnight as her unpaid volunteer manga assistants just because they kind of feel like it. But while all of this is happening, a lot of their school events are being shut down by that virus that's going around.
感染症だかなんだか知らないけど、突然休校になって。
好きな人と花火大会に行くのが夢だったけど、感染症のせいでそれもないし、感染拡大の影響で地区大会中止だって。
So, yeah. Sure, Mary Sue, I totally buy that your teen angst is so extreme you can't possibly see yourself and your 4 boyfriends as shoujo manga characters. Anyway, I'm giving this one 3 horrifying kaiju dolphins. I know that's not really a type of trash and doesn't make much sense, but there's 25 shows in this video, and I am not made of art money. But wait, we're not done speaking of creepy stalkers yet, cause Mona Kawai is here to prove that girls can be just as pushy and obsessive as boys, and Medaka Kuroiwa is impervious to my charms. If pretty privilege were a person, Mona would be her. Born so insanely cute, she was turning heads in the hospital nursery. She spent every day of her life being fawned over and worshipped by everyone around her except for the one new guy in class. Instead of blushing when she turns his way, Medaka only scowls, which only makes her more desperate for his attention and admiration. So she starts subtly flirting with him, and by subtly flirting, I mean flashing her panties and molesting him at every opportunity, only for each advance she makes to be met with yet more scowls, which makes her want him all the more. It's negging the anime. Of course, what she fails to realize is that Medaka is a monk in training, attempting to purge his heart of all earthly desires. So the hornier he gets, the harder he's gotta concentrate. And when he concentrates, he makes a frowny face. That's the joke. And I hope you like that joke, because it is the only joke. Well, the only intentional one. The Japanese internet kind of had a field day with how cheap the OP looks. They call it the insect dance, and I'm giving this one 2 insect dancers out of 5. Winter's trashy rom-com lineup might be seeming pretty dire at this point, but thankfully, the 100 girlfriends who really love you is still here, still peak, and only getting peaker with each new girlfriend that joins Rentaro's, At what point does a harem become a cult?
それじゃあメイド彼女加入会ということで、ベタとベイド服を着ましょう。んなもん着るわけないでしょ。みんなのメイド服姿か、可愛いだろうな。
At any rate, I already made a whole video-esque food review about 100 Girlfriends last month, so I'll spare you any repetition. Suffice to say, it's the absolute pinnacle of this genre, a delightfully zany comedy that delivers more sincerely compelling romance than most shows with 1% of its love interests, and a shining example of what 5 golden dumpsters looks like. Now, I'm getting married to a girl I hate in my class isn't quite that good, but it is a hell of a lot better than I expected from that title, which could easily describe like 20 different anime we all forgot existed throughout the 2000s. I still definitely would have forgotten it if it came out back then, but in more of a, oh yeah, that show sort of way than most of those, oh yeah, that shows. Like all the best rom-coms, most of the cast is certifiably psychotic, especially the romantic leads, and especially their grandparents, who forced them to marry each other in order to vicariously live out their own high school tryst they were too scared to have all those years ago. Akane is a hyper-competitive, rules stickler workaholic with a hair-trigger temper and a hardcore cute animal addiction, while Saito's a genius gamer slacker who thinks bathing is optional, garbage goes out once a month or so, and juice boxes, cup noodles, and protein shakes constitutes a well-balanced meal plan. It goes without saying these two butt heads constantly, which makes it a pleasant surprise that they actually start getting along and moving their romance along at a decent clip once forced to cohabitate. Instead of building an entire status quo out of one rapidly tiring gag, take notes, Medaka. The opposites attract each other immediately, creating room on either side for all the crazy people around them to start crowding in and complicating things. With the standout of the bunch definitely being Shisei, Saito's ride-or-die cousin slash emoto, who is cute enough to get away with basically anything and fully willing to weaponize that.
I fear no man, but that thing, it scares me.
It's not a revolutionary anime by any means, but as waifu delivery systems go, it's a well-oiled machine that gets the job done. 2 golden dumpsters. Our first main course of the evening is another throwback of sorts, though a far more specific one. True trash connoisseurs will fondly remember 2014's insanely violent and equally horny psychological harem thriller Fruit of Grisaia, which followed the only guy at an all-girls school slash prison slash insane asylum's efforts to make his classmates open their hearts and also legs, and unravel some Poundland Metal Gear conspiracies along the way.
Behind D. Colonel, what's a Russian gunship doing here?
Grisaia Phantom Trigger is a sequel of sorts with a mostly new cast of characters and relatively self-contained story that you can jump right into even if you haven't seen the original, in which Mihama Academy, the backdrop for all of that show's sex and violence, has been transformed into a training facility for SWORD, the special organization for research and development, which mostly researches ways developing young women can murder people. Because of course, as anyone who's seen Lycoris Recoil and Noir and Gunslinger Girl and Kite and Mezzoforte and Kill Me Baby and holy shit, there's a lot of these knows, high school girls are the best assassins. Pretty much the only assassins, actually. In fact, when you're an orphan girl in nondescript foreign slum country, your career choices are prostitute or hit woman. That's it. That's the only 2 options. And they decide which one you get at the prostitute slash assassin temp agency by asking you exactly one trick question. Aha, Jeff, you say. I've caught you fibbing now, for you see, I have played the Hitman game starring bald clone assassin Agent 47, and thus I know there is at least one other type of assassin, sexy nun assassin. But here, you fool, you have activated my trap card. For while there are indeed nun assassins in this anime, with bulletproof habits no less,
まだ挨拶の途中だろうが。挨拶ってのは人が人がましくあるために神が与えたものだぜ。
They are, in fact, just the Catholic school variant of your typical Joshi Kosei killer. Now, with Phantom Trigger, this visual novel franchise has officially reached the stage of fatification, where basically all of the hentai elements are gone and the focus is mainly on action and character drama, but that still means you'll see a girl turn the corner on her estrangement with her father plus mountain of childhood trauma immediately after beating another high school girl in a sniper duel by using her teenage ninja friend's ass as a bipod. And many of the cuties turning dudes into blood piñatas in these gorgeously animated action scenes are expecting to be paid in hugs and head pats later. If that sounds like a fun time to you, make sure you watch the 3 Phantom Trigger prequel OVAs before they disappear from YouTube at the end of March, or else the rest of it on Crunchyroll will be pretty confusing. But with that caveat, I give it 3 golden dumpsters. Now, we've gobbled up a lot of trash tonight, but I hope you saved just a bit of room because we saved the best for last. While they clearly threw all of their animation budget for winter into Welcome to Japan Miss Elf, Zero G made up for that by pouring all of the spice they left out of our trash appetizer into their second big titty elf girl dish of the season, Behe Neco. The elf girl's cat is secretly an S-ranked monster. As the title suggests, this anime follows an unnamed knight who's reincarnated as a baby behemoth and gets adopted by an up-and-coming elven adventurer when she mistakes him for an adorable kitty cat. Whenever she's in danger, he uses his OP S-rank monster skills to protect her as best he can, while still keeping his true nature a secret, and in return, she,
アリアちゃんも人事じゃないにゃ。エレメンタルキャットって異種交配できる生き物にゃ。それがいいじゃないですか。
Yeah. Now, you might remember me straight up hating my Life as Inukai-san's dog a few years back for doing basically the same thing in a contemporary high school context, and I still do. That show is vile. But for some reason, when I watch Behe Neco, I find myself having a lot of fun. And maybe that's just down to good old-fashioned desensitization, but I think it really comes down to the fact that there's more to these characters and their story than just this pretty girl got a new pet and all her pretty friends want to f it for some reason. To be clear, most of them do still want to do that. Like, at first her cat girl blacksmith friend who wears nothing but overalls is like, damn girl, it's weird as shit you want to f that cat. But then she sees the cat fighting and...
強いオス。
Yeah, also after he murders a dragon and that dragon is reborn as a sexy lady because reasons, she dedicates her entire miraculous second chance at life to making little dragon cat girl abominations.
さあ強き者よ我と一戦交えるのだ
This shared passion is, in fact, the thing that brings this adventuring party together as friends and comrades, but f***ing cats is just one of their mutual interests, not literally the only thing they ever do. It's not even the only thing they do with the cat. Sometimes she puts a cute little dress on him and takes him on picnics. They also take on quests, go dungeon delving, and fight monsters to earn new skills and equipment that then let them fight bigger monsters and do harder quests. The show's built around a typical but well-executed lit RPG progression loop, albeit with more bath scene interludes than usual. And because of the gimmick that the party's strongest fighter has to hide his power level, it even manages the occasional slideshow of a decently tense fight. Don't get me wrong, it's nothing amazing. It doesn't even clear most of our can't believe it's not isekai buffet, but it does give the story something to be about that's not cat f***ing for at least half of each episode. So when it does return to Shane Dawson mode, you still get that holy shit, they really went there reaction instead of Inukai's, ah shit, here we go again. Which is the difference between the sort of trash you can sit down and laugh at with friends and the irredeemable garbage that just leaves you all staring in uncomfortable silence. Behe Neco might still have that effect if you can't find the right kind of friends or the right kind of intoxicants, but it is a glorious 5-alarm dumpster fire if I've ever seen one. And I am so glad that we could end our biggest menu ever on such a high note.